This episode of the Best Damn League Show period is brought to you by eSportsBet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They are running their World's Prediction Series contest, Season 2 right now. As you can see on screen, 10 million USDT prize pool. It is free to enter. You go to the site, you sign up, they give you some DJT to make bets with. If you can get high enough up in terms of DJT, you access these prizes, enormous prize pool, hundreds of thousands of USDT to be won, and it's free to enter. You can just go there right now. And if you want extra chances, if you also deposit crypto to eSportsBet, they will give you a 50x bonus deposit of DJT. So if you were to put $100 worth of crypto onto the site, then you would get 5,000 DJT to play within this contest here. Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League Show period. And our guest, that's right, it's another episode with a guest. Because I'll make up a lie, it's not really the reason why, but it's going to help because there is that whole week that you have off LEC, bizarrely, where they do that thing still, where in the split they just have a week off. So whatever, this way we'll go super deep on what's happened, and then we'll have a week off and then we'll all come back, won't we? So our guest for this one is, you can either say SeeEl or SeeEl, who is the assistant coach, or whatever you call that position, at Rogue. Because Freddy122 just never appears on camera. I actually did interview him when he used to play at LEC in like 2013 or something. I'm not joking. You never ever see this guy on camera. So we found one person in Rogue who's in the coaching staff who is willing to actually come on the show and give us some of their thoughts. So SeeEl, first thing I want to know actually is this. Like most people, like I alluded to there, because the coaches have a Rogue just isn't super front facing. Most people don't even know who you guys are. Like I noticed you never even get mentioned. It's nearly always just about the players and the players playing well or winning games or having a good split or choking in play. No one ever seems to ever mention the coaching staff except me. Like I'm the only one who's ever brought it up as an angle. So what I wanted to know actually is like, what is your take on like the setup of Rogue? Like, for example, is Rogue a team where do you get to have a lot of input in what you do in your job within the team? Is the coaching staff, do they control everything? Do they have a lot of power? What's it like within Rogue? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we have a lot of freedom to do what we want to do with the players, right? But it's not as hierarchy, like it's not as set as you would imagine with the team dynamic. Like Freddie gives me a lot of freedom to do what I want a lot of the time, and so it's really more of an open forum of ideas where we share and exchange what we think the best way or best approach, for the team is in the moment. So yeah, I would say coaching staff definitely have a lot of responsibilities. From my experience, a lot more than some of the other teams. And yeah, I mean, I just get to do what I want basically, which is nice.
So no one gets confused. Obviously, if they go on to Leaguepedia or Gamepedia or whatever, where they see like all the team sheets and stuff, they're going to see that you have a Korean flag, right? Yeah. From your accent, you are just ethnically Korean. You didn't like grow up in Korea or something, right? You're not like a Korean coach in that sense. In case someone wonders, like, oh, the imported Korean coach, like you're from the oceanic scene, right?
Yeah, I am from the oceanic scene, but I mean, I grew up in a Korean household. I actually moved there when I was a child, like 4 years old. But
okay.
I frequented Korea like once every couple of years, once every year kind of thing for a couple months. So I definitely say a lot of that culture and ideology does impact the way I coach. That being said, yeah, I mean, I'd call myself more Australian than a Korean for sure.
Have you got any of the strictness though? Do you believe in sort of a harsher hierarchy?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, coaching is really a collaboration, right? You have to do what's best for the players and what works best with the staff as well, right? So something that I think is really good is while Simon gives me a lot of freedom to do things, at the same time as the kind of leader of the coaching staff, he also makes sure that we are all on the same page and that we're able to deliver a well thought out kind of system to the boys as well, right? So yeah, I'd definitely say that I'm more on the stricter side, probably. A little bit more than Simon because of my background, but the way we present to the players has always been kind of uniform and well thought out. I would say anyway. So yeah.
Anyone's confused, Simon is Freddie because he's
Freddie.
Where for some reason they pick an actual real first name, and then you go, "Oh, your name must be Edward." Then they're like, "No, how would it be Edward? It's like Scrapnik." Like, brilliant, yeah. Pro players as usual. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, well, come on, Dom. Do you have some questions about Rogue coaching staff? Because, like I say, we never ever get to find out who the hell they are or what they're even. I don't know anything about them. I don't know how they conceive of the game, what they think about the splits. Like, it's a mystery to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think I would have a comment or just a question about the how coaches come from OCE, because we see a lot of coaches actually from OCE the scene. We see a ton of them in NA. You know, Swiffer, for example, is one of the most historic OCE players of all time. People don't know he was on Chiefs. He was the mid laner of Chiefs when they were
long time mega veteran. Yeah,
mega veteran. I think eventually he played for Order. He's the coach of SK, and we just see a lot of OCE coaches. And I think the funny thing about that premise is that when OCE always came up as a region, it was a region that actually had pretty decent mechanics because the server was located in Sydney. So you have like people with like, you know, 15 ping, 16 ping, something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and like if you know the way that Australia is set up, pretty much everything is on the east coast of Australia. There's like Perth, but like no one's from fucking Perth, all right? Like no one from the scene is at least from Perth. You know, everyone's just from, you know, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, all that stuff. So it was generally considered a region with good mechanics, some like up and coming players, but like no macro, you know, like they were the region that was like, oh man, what do you do? You're throwing at Baron every single time. It was just like the hardest region to watch in terms of that. And now we see a lot of coaches actually go and like teach their macro to other regions. So how do you actually up your level of like knowledge when you come from a region like that? Because obviously within OCE, macro is like a meme.
I mean, I think that OC specifically was a really top-heavy region. I mean, it still kind of is. I mean, for sure, our macro is not very good, right? But I would say the OGs were a little better in the sense that they started off in, you know, Season 2, Season 3 when the NA server was a thing, right? So a lot of the legends in OC...
50 ping.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, they were actually quite intelligent about the game. If you speak to them even nowadays, like, I would say Swiffer's, you know, very... I mean, I haven't spoken to Swiffer so much, but I have played with Radia, for example, for a few games, and some of the older names, and Swiper as well. And I'd say that they are quite intelligent about the way they think of the game, especially the OGs. Nowadays, with all the talent kind of moving out of OCE, I would say it's really much left to be desired, right? With exception to some of the older pros coming back. But for sure, like I think while we were lacking in the macro sense, I think a lot of the OGs are definitely good enough to coach macro, and from a lane sense, even more so, right? The way they kind of systemize lanes or think about lanes. And I'm the type of person that actually believes that, you know, ex-professionals will take over the majority of coaching in the next 10 years. Say 95% of them will be replaced. This is almost an extreme view, but this is just kind of how I see it. Just because of the knowledge in terms of the game, and if they're able to transition that with the right kind of personality. You met Swiper, right? For example, right?
Yeah.
This kind of guy, if he's with players, he's able to kind of provide them with the right environment and the right way of thinking. And it's not just the macro stuff. I mean, if you are an ex-professional, you know how it feels like to have to play on stage, right? Especially the older Chiefs guys, because they played in the international wildcard tournaments, right? Sure. This is before my time.
Yes.
But where I come in, I'm a bit of a unique factor because I'm the only coach that wasn't an ex-professional that's ever made it out of the region, and I'm also the only guy that's made it out in 1 year, right? So in my first year of coaching, I directly got an opportunity at the Golden Guardians, and so I mean, I have a bit there, but
because he accidentally just looped into some curves. I don't know if you know this, but Dom famously got in trouble last year because he called out. It was fucking who was I'm thinking
in Arrow.
In Arrow, there we go. The famous long-time Golden Guardians coach. Dom called him out, said he was like nepotistic because he'd hired a lot of coaches from the Oceanic region.
Well, look, I'm what is known in these streets as an OC hater. Just so you know, full disclosure, all cards on the table. It is what it is. So
why do you? Jokes aside, why do you hate on them? Like, why do you not like it generally?
Just because I went there for 3 months. I played in it was like the most dog shit server I've ever played on. Like it is like disgustingly bad. And then like everyone has an ego. The whole server is super racist against Chinese people. It's like if you have a Chinese person in your game, it is fucking going down. Like they're gonna fucking start spamming and shit. Like so, I just like didn't enjoy my time there. You have a really just it's not even really a scene. I mean, there's like 40-minute queues when you get to high elo every single game. Even in like the highest rated games, like in, you know, the peak times where you'd think like, oh, it's prime time, scrims are over, we're gonna get some games. It's like 40-minute queues, and I just like thought the players were dog shit. I mean, it just is what it is. Like he said it before we were on camera. SeeEl was like, yeah, I remember when you came to OC, you were super washed and you got rank 6. So like that should tell you. If I'm like, if I was playing the worst league of my life and I was ranked 6, that should tell you about the fucking server right there.
I mean, to be fair, that guy Pabu was some sort of a professional there, and he has a fucking peanut butter and jelly sandwich for a brain. So, what do you expect, right?
Okay. So the Golden Guardians thing. The reason why I laughed at the Golden Guardians thing is because it seems like Golden Guardians just loves OC coaches, and Inero got a huge break in OCE where he coached the Tainted Minds team that ended up exploding.
Yes.
People don't know history-wise.
It was a big drama as well, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big drama. I dated the manager of that team for years, so like I knew all the intricacies of what happened.
It was the reason you were in Australia, right?
Yeah, that was the reason why I was in Australia. So I know the intricacies of that scene, and it just seemed weird that like, if OC coaches were super good, why just one team with one coach or one coach that had experience at OCE that knew a bunch of OC players, like everyone would just come to him because he had Jachuz, he had Spooks, Swiper, I believe Swiffer was there actually for a while before he went to Europe. Maybe I need to be corrected on that. I'm not exactly sure, but it seems like there's been a lot of OC coaches that have went specifically to Golden Guardians. So, I mean, it seems very awkward when it's like, okay, so there's one guy that's been to OCE, and then suddenly every coach that is OC like in NA is suddenly on that team. So that's why I've always thought the Golden Guardians thing was a bit funny. But I guess I would ask you from your perspective, like, why do you think that these players were not able to even succeed within the OC region? Because you had the majority of those players on the same team right before they came to NA. So you had, Swiffer, Spooks, and Swiper all on that team. Like, if those are three great minds and the OC region is, really, really lacking in terms of skill, why do you think that core was able to struggle if they like?
I mean, I think there are always exceptions, right? I think there are for sure exceptions, right? So I mean, I definitely understand. I'm a bit different because I'm not going to come in here and just defend the Oceanic server. For sure, there's a lot of issues like the long queue times, the average low skill level, but there's always exceptions to the rule in terms of talent.
FBI was always good.
I mean, FBI was crazy good. I think, Swiffer and Swiper, I mean, this is before my time, right? But even just speaking to Radia, when I first started to get in the scene at 2018, 2019, this guy was a finance guy, right? He hadn't touched League in years. He just comes in and hits Challenger like this. Not just because the server's easy, because he's really intelligent about the game, right? So I would say that...
For people that don't know, Radier is one of the prodigies of the region. He was like considered the best player by far in the region. He played AD carry for that Chiefs team with Swiffer, Spooks, and Swiper. So
the thing is, like, it wasn't just him. I think they were all kind of on the same. Maybe Radio was a bit high as a player or reputation or whatever it is. But the main thing I'm trying to get at is I think that there are really exceptions to the rule, from my personal opinion. And I can be transparent with this because I don't really have a friendship with these guys. This is not something that I'm doing out of nepotism. I'm not defending them because I had a connection with them at all. It's because I know for a fact that those people could have played in North America if they wanted to. They could have left the region. And part of the reason that they stayed was because they had a real sense of patriotism and a sense of camaraderie, from my understanding, amongst those players, right? The old OG Chiefs roster that won multiple times in 2015, 2016. So, I mean, these are players that I think when you were playing Dom, they definitely could have played against you if they wanted to, right? If they could have come to your region.
When I went to OCE, like, they were still pretty good players. They were like, I used to say there was 15 good players on the region, and it would be like pretty much all of Chiefs, all of Direwolves at the time. So it was like Surenfire, King, those guys, and then there was like 5 random players that were in high elo that I just thought were good. Like, one of them was Jimmy Prowler Wu, who's like one of the memes over there. Everyone just like, this guy is just like insanely toxic. He's just one of the funniest people. I mean, that's why he smiled the second I said the name. But like, I thought that those players were some of the top 15 best players, but it's still like best players relative to OC.
Well, I mean, I can say transparently with this again. Like, I mean, to get onto the narrow topic, I don't think that he's just hiring his friends. For me, if you hire some people that that you can work well with in terms of personality, and you're able to build a very solid set of coaching systems, for me, I mean, I don't see why not. Why you wouldn't hire these people now? Are there a lot of other talents out there that maybe are being missed? For sure, possibly, right? But if you're in charge of a project and you just need some really solid minds, I mean, I can't see why you can't hire these people if you think that they help you perform at a higher level, right? That being said, I mean, with these talents, like I actually think that even when they retired, they could have come back to the scene and played, and they would have shit on, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the server, right? So I'm really stressing the fact that I think that these people are exceptions. They can be considered legends.
Okay.
I think they played in other regions to start off with, and they talked with a lot of people that were in other regions as well, which just made them fundamentally better, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. One, I don't give a flying fuck about Oceanic League of Legends. And two, there's an LEC show anyway, so let's talk about LEC. Right, let's talk about Rogue again. Right, so one thing people might not know is you weren't in Rogue until this year, so you've only been on this particular roster. So I'm actually interested in that sense, because obviously the main thing people have talked about narratively about Rogue is like the swap between Inspired and Malrang, and then like Trimby's development, and then like what happened, like, you know, that it's more like these narratives of like the angles. What I want to know is like, what do you think your impact on Rogue has been? Like, what have you tried to bring to this version of Rogue and 2022 Rogue?
I mean, I think I'm a bit of an all-rounder. So part of the reason I got exported to begin with and given an opportunity is because exported.
It sounds like he's like a fruit or something. Like,
I mean, almost right. I mean, I'm a bit of a commodity. So like, it's because in the Chiefs, I played. I was a GM as well, right? So I actually did a lot of like some of the accounting stuff, like looking after that. Like, I mean, I did a lot of.
Wait, hold on. Did you just say that you were like that you didn't actually have like any type of relationship with those players, but then you were their GM, or was this like when they're on order, when the
No. This is 2020, so this is after Spooks and Swag.
Okay.
Like, I haven't. Okay, sorry. So my first gig was as a GM. So I think, you know, given my diverse background, I have a skill set, a little bit of a skill set everywhere, right? So working with people, like managing interpersonal relationships, and I also understand like the intricacies, or I'd like to think the intricacies of management and what they need, right? And then on top of that, you know, when I was first starting out, say 2020, 2021, I really started working on my lane coaching. It's not so much the case anymore, but it allows me to kind of, I'd say, go into the niche fundamentals behind like how they should be playing, what wave they should be crashing, how fast, for example, like lead clears and into 3-camp, or do they want to not show position? Are they warding wave 4-5? Like these kind of intricacies, I think that I cover and I help a lot. And obviously I also have like the translation aspect, but that's not particularly why I was brought there. I think that for me, I play a role in that allows the existing coaching stuff to be better, as well as kind of integrate all the remaining members and kind of bring them together and help bring them together a little bit more seamlessly, you know, through removing things like the language barrier and working on lane stuff and specific things.
How do you actually become good enough at laning, or just knowing about lane, to be able to coach it without actually having like laned at a pro level, for example? Because obviously, you know, like LEC is going to be even higher level than North America, right? So like it's going to be generally really good laners that are going to have a lot of knowledge about how these lanes should play out. So, I mean, I guess that was what my original question was getting at. Like, how do you level up past the, like, you know, restraints of like what you're able to do within your own, you know, ecosystem? Did you just watch a lot of VODs, or like how do you actually develop that skill?
I mean, for sure, that's something that I couldn't answer before, right? Because we kind of got off track. But I would say that it was a lot of trial and error. A lot of, I mean, just kind of throwing out my pride when I first started. For example, I remember going to Fudge. He had a lot of things that he disagreed with me on before I was professional. And instead of, you know, having some pride and being like, you know, you're wrong or whatever, I went to him and I said, okay, why do you think that I'm wrong? And whatever words was exchanged, I still just kind of swallowed it and went to him and said, look, how can you help me? And that's really kind of been my mindset the whole time. So with a combination of playing a huge amount of solo queue games, I'd say throughout 2019, 2020, I played like 4,000 solo queue games a day, 4,000 solo queue games a year while working full time. So it's really just an insane amount of workload, plus VOD, plus having like some adding some systems so that like these things are replicable, for example, and then kind of talking to top coaches as well. So it was a combination of a lot of things. I think lane coaching, or just laning in general, at the pro level, just it doesn't just come from playing as a professional. In fact, I think a lot of professional players lack the systems aspect that helps them be consistent or keeps them at the very top for a long time, right? That coupled with, you know, studying traditional coaching methods, studying efficient learning paradigms, and some of the academic things, it kind of gives me a holistic view on what is needed in a game, and how do you improve, and how you actually can be better. And with the niche things, I also take a lot of inspiration from things like poker and the whole idea of a game tree, right? GTO, and finding the right solutions that way. So for me, it was like a bit of a rare case, because I think I had a lot of people that helped me on the way. Like I've talked to King, I've talked to Fudge, I talked to, you know, a lot of the top coaches when I was going up, and just things as simple as, you know, messaging Peter Dunn or Mac even, right? And just exchanging ideas and things like this during interviews even, right? All these little things add up to being able to create a very solid set of systems, ideas, and a way to look at the game.
Yeah, like a Cloud9 coach with the systems.
True. Yeah. Dreaded systems. Yeah. By the way, there'll be. I'll give people a little spoiler. There will be some shows in the future. I won't say the context. You'll have to wait and see. There will be a show at least in the future where more info might come out about that whole LS case. And spoiler, you're going to be mad underwhelmed when you find out what the systems and stuff are. Like, it's nothing great. Like that whole thing. Essentially, everyone looks bad in that scenario when you know the story. So anyway, right, the SeeEl. The question I have is this: as I alluded to, being as we can't ever actually talk to Freddy122, let me ask you this question. Right, who is he as a coach? Because one thing I find very interesting is this. Usually, actually, head coaches tend to have like a general philosophy of the game, and most of the teams they coach adhere to that philosophy, and that's how they make the play. Whereas the very interesting thing about Rogue, even though it was before your time, the Rogue lineups, it's not even about the players. They've had totally different playing styles. If you look year to year to year, actually, like they've gone from, at one point they were only good in like the fucking early game. Then before that, they were just the scaling team. This year, maybe they had something in the middle. Like they've been through all the styles. So who is Freddy122? What type of a coach is he? What philosophy? How does he think about the game? How would you explain it?
Yeah, so Freddy obviously has his set of ideologies and how he views draft and how he views the game. Obviously, I can't talk about that too in depth because I think that's a competitive advantage in this field.
Or just generalities, like things like scaling and stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he tends to view the game in a much more lane-orientated style. And actually, in that regard, there's a lot of things that we come to disagreements with in the coaching room, right? Which is fine as well. But something that I think really sets him apart is that he gives a lot of freedom and trusts the people that he hires to do their jobs, and he inputs them he inputs these ideas in the right moments, I think. So in that area, he's definitely like a really solid leader, I would say. A little bit more on the quiet side, and he's not going to go out for fame and like put out on Twitter or whatever he wants, but whatever you guys are thinking with the more traditionally well-known coaches like Yamato or like Mac, for example. But he will like do his job. He will understand what the strengths of each player and what the strengths of the coaching staff are and utilize them very well. And I think the big success, a lot of Rogue's success comes down to that, right? It's not just him scouting, for example, Malrang. It's like utilizing his assistant coach, Bloomington at the time, who's now coaching Aggo Rogue, and he's 11-0. He did fantastic in EU Masters as well. Like Bloomington's, for example, a very, very solid lane coach and a coach, right? He's a very top level.
If people don't know, that guy was one of the coaching staff of Rogue the whole time, even before they had these players they have now from the ERL team.
Yeah. So for sure, like I think the strengths of Simon and how he is as a coach is that he trusts the people he hires. He has a very set, solid idea on how he wants to play the game, and he just gathers ideas and then kind of puts them out there, right? Like gathers ideas and puts the ones that he likes, and then kind of he knows how to filter them out in the right way, I would say, and implement them. So that's just kind of how I see Simon. Yeah, but I would say that the general success of the Rogue team doesn't just come down to him. Like before, I'd say in 2021, the fact that he used Isma very extensively, who's a performance coach of Vitality, for example, I heard really, really good things about him. From my conversations with Bloomington, he seemed very knowledgeable, and I think that they utilized him very well as well, right? And in 2022, I mean, I think I've been utilized quite well, and it's only getting better with time. So, yeah, I'd say that's how he is as a coach.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a couple questions. So just to go back before we started this, like, so if you were playing 4,000 games a season, was that something that you got to like relatively high rating where you yourself were like competing against some of the players, or like was that just kind of like you would go into the games and kind of like experiment, like play multiple different roles and just try to get as much out of like each experience as possible?
Well, I got the Diamond 1 in every role, but in Oceania you still get some GM queues and Shell queues. So for sure, like. Once in a while, I'd get some queues with them, like some games with them. But it wasn't at a pro level for sure. Like nothing that I could put on my resume at this level, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's enough where I can implement some of my ideas. I kind of understand the idea of like, how to say, I get a better feel for damage, I feel like, in review and how things like play out. And that helped tremendously. Nowadays, I don't think it's as necessary because if you have that experience once, a lot of the time you pick it up very quickly. But yeah, I mean, in that sense, for sure, it helped. sure help.
Here's the analogy I would give, right? When you just said there, like, that you get the feel for the damage, that's the one area, if you've never played the game at a high level, you will never be able to access. It's essentially what the experience of playing is like. Because the analogy I would give is MMA. If you've ever watched UFC, right? If you're a pleb, you're not totally wrong. Like, for example, you might be watching and going like, this guy's doing a bad job of like stopping them kicking his legs. Like, you're right, correct. That's actually correctly. You've identified his problem. But what you don't know is, unless you've ever been kicked in the leg by someone who does Muay Thai kickboxing, you don't know how incredibly painful that is. And that will fuck with your mind. So, for example, that guy isn't even able to think the same way you are. Like, you're talking like you're watching a chessboard, which is what we all do when we're observing, and you're just making the perfect choice. But the premise is, when you play the game, it's not just decision making, is it? It's about how you're feeling and what that felt like, and if you think you can go in and you intuitive feel for if you can re-engage. Or it's like, I don't think people realize that aspect of the game. That's why coaches don't directly coach the experience of the player. It's more like I say, they do the observation of like, here's a general tendency, or here's a concept maybe that you were missing.
I mean, I think just to add to that, I think I have a pretty good idea a lot of the time. But part of coaching, even if you're ex-professional and you played at a high level, you will be wrong in a lot of situations. So it's about kind of understanding and admitting when you're wrong, and really teaching players or creating an environment where it's easier to give and take criticism, right? So say, for example, I'm breaking down a team fight. I'm saying you have to take this pixel and mark this guy, and then we want to send 4 people through here. And this is kind of how we want to play through Akali, where like Akali, buys space, for example. Then in some situations I might be wrong because I might miss a nuanced thing, or they see something that I don't while they're in the game, right? And those instances, I just have to be quick to adapt, So of course,
or based off like items, like that might be conceptually correct, but like somebody might be strong enough to just mark the Akali and take it out of the team fight. So yeah, there's definitely nuance. I mean, I think that the thing I was getting to there is I wanted to ask you the age-old question about coaching, which people have debated for a long time. Like, do you need experience playing at a relatively high level in order to be a good coach, in your opinion? To be a good league coach, in your opinion?
Okay. I want to just go no filter. I think, as I said, 95% of coaches will be replaced by pros. And I said that because I think that, like, in most cases, yes. I think, coaching, it can be a learned skill for sure. And there can be exceptions to the rule if you, work very, very hard, or, you have the right personality for it, right? I mean, if for example, if you watch Yamato's interviews in Euphoria, he briefly touches a topic where he says that he doesn't pretend to be the expert when it comes into the game, right? And a lot of the cases, having that kind of figure in a team can be extremely helpful. So no, in the sense that there can be exceptions to the rule, but yes, in the sense that I think it's tremendously helpful. And if you want to be a next level coach, kind of like a Peter Jackson figure in was it Peter Jackson? It was
Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson. Sorry, Peter Jackson's the
Lord of the Rings guy.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings guy.
He's talking about the NBA coach.
Phil Jackson. Like,
11 rings.
He has his idea of how the basketball should be played, but he was also a player himself, right? And that helps tremendously. That being said, you also get very successful managers like Mourinho. So I mean, is it 100% like necessary? No, but do you need to be really something else? I think yes. Right? Or you'll just be replaced because there'll be a guy that's better than you at it. Right.
The problem I have with this topic is I feel like people make it this binary yes or no thing, when to me it doesn't make sense. Like, for example, you notice there's a massive difference between I was like the best soccer player and I just played some form of professional soccer, right? Technically, they're both, I was a pro, but that's a massive difference, right? If you notice, as far as I can tell, Dom, the historical thing, even from sports, goes like this. As a general rule, you should have played the sport, but that's also because, and this is the part I feel like is missing, because if you weren't someone who was a pro, then what were you doing for the last 10 years? So that's the question, right? If, like, maybe like the Mourinho example, if you don't know, Jose Mourinho, who's one of the best like soccer managers ever, and been all the way around the world, won the Champions League and all sorts of stuff, right? He's someone who wasn't like a top professional player. I think he actually didn't even play as a pro. I think he was like maybe he was like an up and coming player, and then he never made it. So pro, and he just immediately became like a coaching staff person quite early on in his life. But the point is, it's not like he was doing nothing in his life and working on a building site. Then he was 30 and went, I think I'll give being a coach a go. Like, he was a lifer. He'd been putting in like 10 plus years, and he learned the game by being like part of a coaching staff. Like, he started as like the bitch coaching staff guy, then became like an assistant coach guy to a legendary coach, by the way, Bobby Robson, then moved his way up like that. So the point is, this guy it's not that he was sat doing nothing and then he was like, I will now attempt to know the game. It's like he was studying the game from the outside, essentially. So what he did is he put in his 10 years of studying the game instead of 10 years playing the game. And like I say on the last point, when it comes to playing the game, the reason why tons of the coaches that are legendary have played, you'll notice they're nearly always the fucking role player, though. They're never like, I was the superstar player of like the NBA team or the NFL team. They're almost never that. So to me, that implies that even if you were a player, it's the players who spent more time thinking and studying who become the good coach. So I think you can do it if you weren't a player. It's just like he says, that's probably going to be the exception to the rule. Yeah, it's probably not often you're going to have some guy who put 20 years in and didn't play. Like, but I think you can sort of get. Here's the key thing as well. I think you'll be a different type of coach if you weren't a pro. You can just be a different style of coach, obviously. Because I've always thought the most overrated angle as well. When fans talk about the idea of you like teaching the player, you're not really teaching him how to use his Q. You're teaching him in what scenario he might, or what else it can affect on the map, and things that like have nothing to do with the pro experience. Like, what does it have to do with your solo queue experience as a top laner? If I just explain, like, actually, if you just wait until this third wave here, when it bounces, then we can do this. Like, that's got nothing to do with that guy's solo queue play. Like, that's stuff that absolutely you can study like it's chess, can't you?
In fact,
well, I think that at least for me, I think the issue with that is that the league is so complex that like a lot of stuff is gonna come down to like how many minions you have, like where the enemy jungler is, and I feel like generally if you don't have like that high level experience, you won't be able to quickly like do the little like math equation of combining all the factors and come to the right conclusion as to like what the best option is, because you're not able to really see the value of each one.
You mean the sort of
things.
like intuitively calculation of like, I just feel that this is what's going to happen now or something from experience, I assume, right?
Yeah, well, it's more intuitively, but then also just being able to like put yourself in the position of the player and then like see what he's seeing. So like, maybe if he misses a couple last hits, then the whole situation changes. It's not like crash the fourth wave and base for Sheen and like cheater recall for Sheen with gangplank because you just don't have the money for it or something. So like a lot of these situations I feel like change, and what at least my experience when I was a player, which was a long time ago, but we still had the same formula where you would have people that were high level players and not high level players coming to coach you. Was that the players that weren't or the coaches that weren't high level players before, they wouldn't be able to like see the intricacies. Like you would have to really spell out to them like why you couldn't play out a situation the like ideal way or something.
Yeah, and actually a lot of matchups play differently, right? Even at the highest level, like if you haven't played in a bit and you don't have the kind of experience of learning the game, I would say you miss a lot of these intricacies. So for example, Kalista Renata versus Senatom Kench, with a small patch, this matchup can change on whether or not you can push wave 1. For example, X champion gets his E nerfed, you don't have control wave. Like there are a lot of intricacies to the game. But that being said, something where I kind of want to add to Dom's point, where I kind of disagree with him also, is have you seen Mourinho coach, for example?
He's not really a football fan as far as I know.
I don't know enough about. If you gave a Phil Jackson example or like a Popovich example, I'd probably know more about.
Well, Mourinho is a really interesting factor, interesting kind of example for me, because he's not a top level professional, but he knows how fast or how well or how athletic his players are in a given moment. So he will actually pull up a VOD. Right. And I did some studying on this myself. He'll actually pull up a VOD of them training and he'll be like, you're being lazy here. You go hard, fast, you pass the ball and you go this way. You don't give the space. So he has an idea and a feel for players that sometimes maybe even that they might not see. So I think it really just depends on the person. Right. And another thing is just also, I think a lot of players actually struggle to stay at the top, not just because they are getting washed or they're getting old. Like ageism is kind of a myth in esports. If you actually see the studies based on it, they say that in the late 1990s to 2000s, when the internet was just coming out, the average age of the gamer was much higher. So when the industry first started in South Korea, for example, the average age of the players were much higher. The ability, the hand-eye coordination was just a lot less developed. That's why 16, 17-year-old pros that started off back then, like Flash, for example, you might be aware of him, right, Thorin? He's still around. He can still compete with the top pros. It doesn't matter. So, I mean, it's not just age. I think it's more to do with the way they think about the game, the way they break things down, the way they learn, right? And they cannot adapt to certain matters, and you see this all the time with professional players. So is it just? I mean, does it help to be a professional player? Of course, but is it certain characteristics that make a really, really good coach or a world-class coach? In my opinion, yes, right. And in certain cases, very rare cases, I think non-professional players have this kind of eye or have this kind of knowledge or feel for it.
Let me throw in a point as well that I don't think is ever brought up, which is this. Everyone talks again, like you notice even when we were talking about pros there, we made it like, did you play a pro? For how long, in what region, in what context, in what role? Because here's the problem I have as well, is yes, absolutely, if you have someone like fucking Mithy, some like legendary pro who was even known for like being genius about the game, yeah, of course, they're going to, from both playing experience and thinking about the game, be on another level. But like, here's what I would say as a pushback, Dom, is if League, it's really important to be like really smart about the game and know that, then how can people be 17 and in their first year ever, a la Jojo, just go to the top of the game and be playing with people who've played for 7 years and who are top pros? Because the game can't just be about decision making and information burn. There's also just a raw mechanic level. There's just aspects of like someone just hits a heater for 6 months, they just get better and better and they're feeling the game, right? So I would say clearly the game isn't as cerebral as people always make out, I think.
Yeah, I think that over time, there's been just less information given to you in the game. I think that's been one of the stylistic changes that Riot has tried to do, whereas like, they hired the time on trinkets and they made it so you didn't have Tracker's Knife, and they've tried to make it so that there is an aspect of uncertainty in the game, and that allows for players with really good intuition to kind of stand out. And I think that's also coincides with when Korea, who played the really like control, like vision control style of League of Legends, as soon as they had these patches where they didn't have as much vision, they started to fall off and LPL started to become better. So I definitely think that it's not as much of a science as like, I think that 2016 was pretty rough in terms of getting into the game because it was like so many 2v1s and it was impossible to experience 2v1s in solo queue. So you would have these like very intricate 2v1s where the meta would be defined, like would be refined down to the part of sharing each minion in the jungle. Each individual monster would have to be split in a certain way in order for people to level at the same time. And that would determine if you could defend a dive or not, or if you could actually catch a wave at the turret. So I think that there was definitely times where it was more...
lane swaps obviously were another one that was super hard to pull off.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, no, that's part of lane swaps. But yeah, I mean, I think that...
I see what you mean, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that there's just... like, it just depends on what time you're coming in. But I also think that... like in NA, it's a little bit different, like where you'll have players that come in and they're like 17, or like Danny, who's like 12, but then it's like, so when did you actually start playing the game? They're like, oh, I was like 6 years old. So it's like, oh, wait, so you've been playing for 11 years, just like the rest of us. You're just really fucking young. Like that's just like you started at a very young age. But I mean, yeah, I definitely see the point. I don't think it's like, it's necessary for you to have wealth of experience, but I just think that it's something that from my experience has just helped. Like, at least I can tell even right now, like the more I play, the better I will be at watching the game. Like when I'm co-streaming, I'll be better at co-streaming the more that I actually play and I have a feel for the champions and I like, know their exact damage outputs and I can just see like what players can do. So I guess that was just my overall point.
Yeah, that's all right. That's why to me the big thing is the different type of coaches, to just have multiple of these coaches on your staff. You can have a guy who's a pro, you can have a guy who wasn't a pro. Right. Yeah. On the LEC topic, I'll tie it into what we were talking about now a little bit. SeeEl, which goes like this. So as Dom said, once upon a time, part of the reason Korea actually ruled League of Legends, in my opinion, is because the junglers were just ahead of everyone else. Like the way they jungled was they perfected it. Like around season 7, they had mastered how the jungle worked in the game. Whereas obviously, as Dom says, the more things they changed and the more uncertainty they included, actually seemed to sort of fuck with how Koreans process the game, what their system would be, as it were. So I have a question for you, because along those lines, right, if you're someone who is interested in like poker game theory and like how you like systems approach, what do you really think of your fucking jungler, mate? Because some of Malrang's fucking early game ganks last split, like, mate, if I was making a flow chart, these are some I would never attempt. Some of these are really ballsy. Like if they work, yeah, it looks amazing, but if they don't, like, holy fuck.
I mean,
go on.
I mean, some of them were for sure like intuitive, but I think a lot of it was, and I've actually held this close to my chest for a long time, but I haven't been able to like tweet it. It's because I personally, and I said this in Rich's show as well, I think that a lot of European laners are boosted. Like, I think they're like really bad. So if you incorrectly manage
right there, OCE coach says EU players are bad. Boom. Just send
no, but the thing is, like, if you look at junglers as well, that like the majority of Western junglers are herbivores. Like they don't actually know. Like they think that timing a camp 2:15. You do your Raptors at 2 minutes. You're back there 4:15 on the dot. You clear those Raptors. Amazing. But what they don't understand is after a full clear, you have to wait at 2 minutes 15 seconds. And then if you're 2 levels up on the jungler and your champion, or the meta doesn't dictate, the meta doesn't give you a champion that can 1v9 games against, for example, other champions. So for example, like if you look at the Astralis game versus Rogue, right? It's very hard for Lulu to 1v9 that game. It's very, very hard, right? In my opinion. So if you just full clear, compared to other laners that can just side lane with TP or push lanes deep, and it overall just get more resources and scale better, and they're just better champions in the current meta, then these junglers can't actually carry. So I actually think that a lot of what Malrang was doing was abusing the fact that a lot of junglers were just herbivores. They weren't punishing bad lanes. They were playing for themselves when they really shouldn't be, right? And also the fact that a lot of these laners were mismanaging their waves, finding bad base timing. So, I mean, can he full clear? Of course he can. Of course he can. But guys, it's not hard. It's really not hard. You just full clear down, you finish your 6 camps at 3 or 5 or whatever, you do your crab 315, you ward wave 4-5 to find the enemy jungle, you take another camp and then you base. Or you stay one more clear if you want like a half item when you're playing something like Karthus, for example, right? It's really not hard to full clear, right? It's really not hard. It's more so that he sees a lane that should base. So I'll give the Kalista Renata an example, okay? If Xanatam overstays in the lane, in bot lane, right? Sorry, if Kalista Renata do not base around wave 4-5, even though they get pushed level 1 because they have control of the wave, no, if they don't base, then Xanatam will win because they'll just out-sustain, right? So say you just mismanage your wave and you don't get pushed, right? Or say you take the wrong skill, as Lucian Nami versus Kalista Renata level 1, and you don't take W, you take Q, and you lose full control of the wave, and they can crash an extra wave and they get a better base or something like that. You just mess up something in the lane, it just completely ruins your game, and your position is completely different from where it should be. Right? A lot of these situations are replicable. And what happens is Malrang just gets into a game. He says, oh, okay, this guy should be 70% HP and his wave should be at his tower. But he's now super overextended with 1 ward when I'm bot on this timer and I know enemy jungle position. Why wouldn't he go? And I'm watching these Twitter analysts be like, oh, he's just a gank heavy style, blah, blah, blah. No, of course not. And also mathematically in solo queue and in regions that are, of course, like much more passive, maybe not so anymore because of the durability patch, but at least in spring, right? Catch up EXP is a thing, right? So the biggest value behind jungling back then was actually getting your laners ahead. It's still kind of the case, right? Just because in the mid game they're able to more efficiently and mathematically gather more resources than your jungler. That's just how it works, right? So where there's some questionable ganks for sure, right? Where there's some very questionable uses of turns, like tempo, and then he didn't base at the right time. Of course, he's a human being. He makes mistakes. But the reason we're winning games in a lot of cases, or the reason he's able to win these early games, is because he's just a better player. I'm sorry, that's just the case. And the only person that I saw that was doing like basically the same thing, but no one was talking about, was Jankos. And to me, that was insane. Like if you actually look at the way he plays, they're very similar, right? And so,
I think the difference for me, at least watching both of those players, is it felt like Jankos had a lot more intention in terms of when something like when a gank wasn't available, it felt like he wouldn't get lost. Where at least I would see a lot of times where Malrang would just start a herald 4 or 5 times in a row, and it's the herald is not your bot is not here yet. You need them to do it, and then he would just be wasting a bunch of time. So I would say that's the reason why I had Jankos as the number 1 jungler and Malrang as number 2 in spring, was because I thought that in those when things went well, both of them are getting kills. But when everything didn't go according to plan, it felt like Jankos had more knowledge about when a play was over, and he would just move on to the next thing. Where it felt like Malrang would be a lot of would be kind of sticky with some plays. He would want the gank to get off, so he would sit in a bush for a little bit too long, or the herald thing or the dragon thing. I felt like there was a couple times where he would go to an objective and just leash it, get it to half-life, other jungler would come, force him off, he'd back off, then he'd start it again, and it was man,
for sure there were lots of questionable things, for sure. But at the same time, I would argue that I think a lot of stuff that he does were also really creative. And in some in a lane-centric draft, because do you agree that the draft is very the draft dictates how you play the game, basically at the highest level? With us, I think it puts a lot of pressure on Malrang because he needs to be extremely creative and take less resources in a lot of cases, because we're very greedy with I would not say as much anymore, but we're very greedy with our lanes, because I think we have very good laners, and this just plays to our strengths. So we're also very good at negating these punishment windows, and it just means that Malrang has to be creative and move around the map and cover these timers as well. So in one way you could say that he's blundering a lot, But then if you actually look at his overall performance throughout the entire split, I think that he was a good league above a lot of the junglers in the league. And I think there weren't random ganks. I mean, for sure, the Herald thing and some things, they are legitimate points, but it wasn't as severe as people thought it was. And
yeah.
I mean, I
never was one of the people that said that he was bad. It was more like he was like not the best. He was like second best, you know? I mean, that's at least how I viewed it.
I mean, I remember coming in and people saying that we were going to come sixth, you know? But I looked at I remember looking at our first scrims and we didn't play that. We played pretty bad, actually. I looked at the very first scrims, and in the first 2 days, I remember messaging our general manager, and I was like, okay, we're going to come top 3. I can just tell, like, instantly. Like, how? Like, you can just see. You can just see. You can see the potential. You can see what people do. And lo and behold, we did quite well, I think, right? So, yeah.
Let's do this. Dom, what we'll do is, I want to get your thoughts on the last week of Rogue, but here's how I'll set it up. So I'll give a little bit of my thoughts as the intro. It goes like this. You know, I mentioned last week that technically, if you look at who they've lost to, it's actually fine who Rogue have lost to. Like, these are some of the teams that would have been questionable to potentially lose to anyway in the split. And so, because they'd won all the rest of the games, they're actually back on track. As you see now, they're tied for first place again. Like, in theory, the split's all corrected. We're back to, they're going to be a top team. But here's the difference, though, Dom, is if you actually look at the quality of the wins they have, that's where I have a problem. That's where I want to start this discussion. Because, mate, they just 2-0'd this last week. They could have gone 0-2. And when I add in that fucking mad throw from earlier in the split, they could have the opposite record. They could be 2-5 right now. And that's not even hating. Like, there's the difference. Rogue is technically tied for first place in the league. They do not look like at all like the best team in LEC right now to me. So, Dom, give me your thoughts initially, and then SeeEl can jump in wherever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you that some of the wins were fraudulent. I mean, the Mad Lions win, that's just complete. Like, that is just fucking crazy. Like, the fact that that's even possible in League of Legends, like, I just want to, like, it just makes me hate whoever designed the game. Like, I don't even think that you should be able to fucking throw that hard when you play that well for that portion of the game. Like, sure, Elder, whatever, like, I know that they, like, outplayed really hard, but if you looked at the game and you were like, who is playing better? It's like Mad Lions is playing better for minute 0 to 25, and then Rogue was playing better from like minutes 25 to 27. And that's like the entire fucking game. And I just think that fundamentally there's like way too many catch mechanics in the game. But like that win, you know, that's not a win where you feel good about. That's one where you stole it. And then the XO game, it was a more legitimate win. But I thought both teams were having a bad day. Like when I looked at both teams, I saw so many mistakes that I didn't feel like either team was playing cleanly. So my issue with Rogue is not that I think that they're bad. It's just that like normally when you've watched Rogue for a while, they're really good in the regular season. They're like one of the cleanest teams. Like, yes, you know, it's not even that they're in first place. It's like when you think about the 9-0 from spring, they were like dominating teams. Like, for example, when they played against G2 both games, it didn't look like G2 really had a chance to beat them at any point. It was just like, oh, this is like the first game I remember, it was like the Akshan top that I believe Odo played into BB Zakali. And it just looked like, it looked like there was no real struggle for Rogue. And we always talk about the Rogue razor cake, which is you always want to buy in because they look so fucking good. And then it always, you know, collapses at the end. And, you know, I just don't know if the team is like really progressing or like, you know, like when I look at the team, I don't feel like, oh, they're trying like a lot of really new things. It just seems like they're just not getting the same wins that they did before. And there's just not like the same cohesiveness before. And I mean, recently in an interview, we heard Larson say that he thinks that there's too much ego in the team. And that's one of the reasons why the team is not progressing. So when I hear all those, when I hear that, and then I see the games and I like look at the record, I mean, I don't really care this early, right? Like G2 is 4-3, but I still think that like when they draft with intention and the way that they know how to win, I think that that they're right now the best team. Like I would take them in a best of 5 right now. So I'm not really sure where I am on Rogue, but I definitely don't think they're the best team. I would probably have them somewhere between like 2nd and 4th.
What do you say about how the split's gone so far, SeeEl?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure there's a lot left to be desired. I actually think that a lot of the loss, like the 2 losses that we had, were actually games that we should have won, right? So the main thing is this. Obviously, in the past, we've had problems with burnout, and we're doing our best to learn from this. You know, so we're actually a bit slower to start than other teams. So I think that definitely played a role in terms of like the fact that we just simply had less time to practice, right? And then,
as in the past, would you have done like 2 weeks before the split or something?
I mean, how would I know, Duncan? I mean, I just started, right? I mean, I started this year, but
you told me you're the one.
You can ask them, like you meet these people, like you know the people that are there. You can.
I mean, we talked about the schedule, and that was like what came up, and I mean, it makes sense to me, right? Because I think burnout's a really, really big thing. Okay. So for sure, like I think the fact that we started a little later makes sense. I think a lot of our like mid games. So for example, I mean, you could say the razor cake thing, right? But I want to address that for a second. You could say the razor cake, but at the same time, like, where did rogue time go? You know, where did rogue time? It doesn't exist anymore, right? And and the same sentence, if we think that it's a pressure-based thing, then why can we reverse sweeps Fnatic? I actually think that, you know, you need to look at these situations objectively. I think that the finals, I mean, I thought that we were the best team coming in. I think that our prep was definitely lackluster in the way that we drafted.
You guys winning the final 3-0, and yeah, that didn't go well for me. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like from a systems perspective, from the way that we play the game, from the way that we view the game, from how organized we were, I thought that we were the best team, and I still think that to this day. I think our prep was a bit lackluster, and I think it's kind of unfair to say that, you know, our players are chokers, or that there's the thing called a rogue razor cake, because all these things are just independent from one another. They can be fixed, they can be addressed, and you learn from it. Same for the whole burnout thing, right? So even though we don't look, you know, the best right now, I'd say that, you know, taking that break might mean that we look much better in the next 4 or 5 weeks. I'm not going to go ahead and curse it and pull off a G2 where, you know, in 2021 G2 where they had the reckless roster and they're like, oh, worlds is free and we're just working on world. It's not like that at all. It's just more so that, you know, for playoffs and worlds or whatever it is, like mental health's a really big thing. I think player longevity is a really big thing, and so that's why we're kind of starting out late. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think some of these stereotypes should be viewed independently. I don't think that they're particularly accurate in a lot of cases, and that's just what I have to say about it. But for sure, our games haven't been
all right. So
amazing.
From your perspective, what was that? What was the game 3 versus G2? If it wasn't like choking, because to me, I'm seeing like Odo getting solo killed by an Orin as Jace. I'm seeing, you know, just like when you listen to the comms, it's just like people aren't even calling like when there's bases, like Orin solo kills the Jace, and then you hear just dead silence. And then the next thing you see, like Trimby flash over a wall top, and then he's like, what the fuck? The Orin's here. And, you know, you guys have this massive lead, and it just feels like, you know, the game is in such a great state. I mean, their AD carry was level 1 at like 5 minutes. So I feel like, you know, that's the problem with Rogue, and that's why people consider them chokers, is because there's always these moments where you're like, okay, this is like where you'd like battle back if you're mentally strong in the series. Like they gave you a pretty much free game. Like you're not going to get a bigger lead than that early game most of the time, and it just all ends up like coming apart. So
I mean, I think our third game draft was winning, but you have to realize that these like off games happen all the time. Like they happen literally all the time. They could have happened in game 1. They could have happened in game 3. I mean, the whole point of a best of 5 is that it's like a stamina-based game, and you have like cushions for when you like mess up, right? So it really comes down to like how well you play over the entire series. And I think what happened was we had prepped in a way that wasn't most favorable to us, right? And the responsibility falls on like everybody, right? But obviously, like us coaching staff would take a bit more of a responsibility in that regard. And then by the time we got to game 3, it was like we played something that we weren't necessarily prepping. It was just something that we thought was a good adaptation, and combined with the fact that there's a lot of pressure from like losing first 2 games, combined with the fact that things haven't gone how we thought they would, right? I think that's completely different from just talking about choking, because I think, like as I said, the best of 5 is like a best example. Like a semifinal isn't any less stressful than a finals, guys. It's very, very stressful if you're 0-2 down, right? A 0-2 down. It just comes down to like how flustered or how prepared are you, right? In first 2 games,
I was only 2-0 up and lost. I never actually got the reverse sweep in. So
I remember Comp said this twice actually in the semifinals. He was like, "Okay, I'm down for a reverse sweep, guys. Like we should have won these 2 games. Like we're a better team." And then we just did it, right? It's like the mentality and the prep and like how you expect the game to go. And if it doesn't go that way, it happens. It's a competition, guys, and like that's what it's all about in the end, right? In a competitive game, it's just sometimes you are prepared, sometimes the other team just plays better, and I think that just was the case. I don't think it was like a choke thing.
Well, as you said, it's only your first year in Rogue. You'll find out in the year 2 and 3. So,
yeah, Thor, what's your take on that? Before we even move on, like, do you buy it? Do you buy it?
Listen, I don't buy it, but just because it goes totally against my philosophy. Like, listen, I do agree. It's not like when Rogue loses, like everyone is a choker. First of all, I don't think that even works like that. Like, for example, I've seen from CSGO, you can get players that individually will clutch their whole career and put them in the wrong team together, and the team collectively becomes unclutch or a choking team. And like, that's one of the weird things about dynamics of personalities and playing styles and stuff. So, like, for example, the thing he said about comp there, I'll give you a little angle on that. If you remember in the comms in the final, I forget if it's after game 1 or game 2, there's a point where comp says something like, I feel like I haven't even played League of Legends yet. Game right? 2. That's not choking, that's tilting. That's like you're just frustrated, like, fuck dude, we're on game 3 of the final, I haven't even got to play yet, like I'm AD carry, I haven't had a chance in the game. Like, even if he says it in like it's just a joke or whatever, like you don't verbalize that if there's not something behind it. So like for me, someone might have choked, someone might have tilted, the staff might just be going, oh, just had a bad game. Because here's the problem with that angle, right? When you said that there, SeeEl, I joked, but there's a grain of truth in it. It's only your first split, so it's all well and good you going, just had a bad day, didn't we? Mate, all fucking Rogue has in finals is bad days. All they have in upper bracket finals is bad days. The best day in the history of the Rogue organisation in League of Legends thus far is that sweep over Fnatic, right? That was almost a fucking sweep by Fnatic. If that's your best day ever, then here's the problem. I'll spin it. I'll go full Thorin. Are you ready? You've brought the fucking demon out now, mate. Don't do it if you don't want it. Here's the fucking, here's the angle for you, right? Here's why you should want me to call Rogue players chokers. Because do you know what they are if they're not chokers, SeeEl? Just fucking second best, mate. They're not good enough. When I call them choker, I'm actually giving them the respect that they might have been the best team that day, that Larson might deserve to win the LEC, that Odoamne might have had a tortured career. Because if he isn't a choker, if there isn't some other intangible affecting him, they're just fucking not as good. They're just worse players. So take that to the bank if you want. Fucking stamp it and go fuck off and get your silver medal if you want. But if you want to have the gold medal, fucking own your mistakes and actually improve them. Don't go, oh, hope that doesn't happen again. What hope? Motherfucker, you build that wall brick by brick. You don't just go, hope it just works out. And then secondly, like, if you're fine with being considered second best, cool, do it then. But here's the other thing. I don't give a fuck about second best, mate. It's win or bust. It's win or bust.
I think it's important that I address that because, I mean, in a way, I actually agree with what you said. I think we were second best. Okay, I mean, there's a big, in my opinion, there's a big difference between first and second. Okay. What I'm saying is, like, you should objectively look at what was the reason behind being second best. That's what I believe, right? And of course,
let me just say this then. I think one other thing I would throw in is this. I tried to imply at the beginning, but I wasn't explicit. The other problem is this. Obviously, people are trying to make a very simple one-sentence narrative to cover basically 3 different rosters of Rogue players and about 5 splits at this point in time. Right? Yeah, obviously, I doubt they lost every single split in exactly the same fashion because someone choked. Yeah, that part is like very simplistic because that's just Reddit narratives where people have the same concept that gets repeated. And for example, like the premise would be if South Made gets kicked, he must have been toxic, you know, like, I'm sure there's a grain of truth to that, but I doubt every time he left the team it's because he was toxic. I imagine sometimes he didn't fit the meta or he didn't get along with the play. So yeah, I'm definitely not on board with that. It's not that like Rogue is always chokers, basically. I'm sure there's many different ways you've lost over the years.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, that's what I mean. Like we were the second best, that's why we're second, right? That's not something that anyone's avoiding. It's just I'm not sure if that the reason was choking specifically.
Yeah,
maybe,
fair enough.
Maybe I haven't been around in the team as long enough as you know, as you said.
That's mainly just bad that I'm fucking maybe beyond that.
Alternatively, I could say that, you know, I work with these players every day, you know. So,
sure.
I mean, at the same time, of course, I wouldn't be able to come here and say that, but I can confidently say to you from a coach, from a person, right, that I think that these guys have the potential to be the best, and that's really what we're working towards. And I would say that, I mean, you could say that it's the same or different roster or same players or whatever, you know, because we maintain 3 of the roster, but I think the level of play or the level of players between each season has been widely different, right? And the environment has been widely different. The coaching stuff has been widely different. You can't say that a roster that had Perkz that, you know, didn't come first back in 2015, 2016 for 1 or 2 splits, it was because Perkz choked. That's not the case at all. I mean, look at Jensen as well. People were saying that he was a massive choker. These things, even if they were true, these things are things that can be addressed and improved on through things like routines, through performance coaching, through a lot of different things, right? And so for me, I mean, from what I felt inside the team environment from talking to these players is that I really do believe that, you know, we have the potential to be the best and we can do it. It just means that the process needs to be right. And really, to win, guys, I think almost everything has to go right. I think
sure.
like it's very, very hard because everyone's trying to win, right? So yeah, I mean, I see your point, but at the same time, I just respectfully disagree because I do think that, you know, there was a time when people were saying that Jensen couldn't win a title. He won a title, right? Same for Bjergsen, same for, you know, a lot of people.
Jensen won a title when he went to like the most star-studded superstar team imaginable, and they barely won. Like, is that the example that we're gonna go for?
I mean, that was before my time. That was before my time. I just gave you a random example. But
it's all good. Okay. It's all good. Yeah. By the way, also, this is why this show's good, isn't it? Because also, you have to understand fans. This is why you have to. I'm like, it's like that fucking famous scene where they're like, the fucking mafia, like, I tried to get out and they pulled me back in. Even if I try and just be like, I'll just be the peacemaker. I'll just have. Next topic, guys. Like, you all know. There's no one does it like me. So Dom knew you had to activate fucking Weapon X. What do you know?
Look, I've spent a lot of time with Australian people. Australian people can take it. You know, it is what it is. Like, they're just thick-skinned by nature. So you know,
it's one thing that's really misunderstood about people from Oceanic region is when you meet them, people think, oh, they're so chill and laid back. That's exactly why, though, Dom. It's because if you can't take a joke there, you are a fucking social outcast. So the reason everyone's so chill is because when they banter so harsh, mate, that you have to just be able. You have to be chill. You have to have that sort of like frame.
The first time,
make it, mate. You won't.
First time I went to OCE, you know, I was hanging out with some people. They're like, hey, cunt, and I'm like, oh, whoa, like we're outside, like keep your voice down, like don't say it like that, like please, like relax. And you know, they're like, no, that's just like that's how you say friend. They're like, okay, this is what rule 1 of Australia. They told me you call your mates cunts and your cunts mates. That's what they told me.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
that's how I. That's how I was introduced to Australia right there.
When I realised the internet had actually skewed who I was as a person and it had gone too far. There was once a time a few years back where I was just on a train with someone and I was talking and this woman just goes like, "Excuse me, like I'm sorry to interrupt, but like, could you please not swear like in front of my child?" And I was like, I looked around and like she was sat there with like a 3-year-old child, and I realised I was just talking like how gamers do. So obviously I was talking, there's this fucking cunt anyway. I smashed his head in the game, like fucking dick and tries to gank me. I was telling this kid, like, I was just wilding apparently. And I even had to be like, yeah, I apologise completely. Like, shit, like, fuck. Whoa, we're public now, it's not on the internet anymore. But anyway, I'll tell you what, because obviously we've like fucking, we've put him on the torture rack here, we've probed his soul about Rogue. I've even fucking roasted him about the fact he's only been there for 1 split. Here's a positive thing though. Are you ready for something positive? Odoamne looked fucking great on Zach, mate. He looked fucking banging in that game. That looked like a really good performance.
Yeah. I mean, it was against SK, but yeah.
Even so, you don't have to ruin it like that, Dom.
All right, my bad. Okay.
Like, it wasn't against the best top player in the league, let's be real.
When I judge these LEC games, like, because of how the league looks right now, I'm like throwing out most Misfits, like BDS, SK,
just play only basically for you.
Yeah, for me, if I see those games, like they don't really tell me too much about the team.
Yeah.
So I'm really just looking for like the matchups between that top 6. You know, anyone from Mad G2 to the top. Sure. Like I'm 100%. You know, gonna value those games. Plus, it's also regular season. I think that's the hardest thing about you know Rogue is we can have this discussion now, but when we talk about the team, really the only hurdle they have to get through is winning a championship in LEC. Like they've done everything else. Like if they end up coming second again, it's like the same story. You know, we'll still have all the narratives, you know, stay the same. So that's kind of what you set up when you have excellence. It's like you just have to you set your own standard, and their standard is to be a championship level team. Like they
by the way, SeeEl, that's even the reason why it might seem harsh if you are Rogue, but it's actually a good thing to be in the center of the eye of the storm with all the scrutiny. Because, like Dom just said there, put it this way, mate, the worst thing you could ever have is if everyone went, you know what, congrats, mate, 2nd place, amazing, wow, you guys finished top 3, fucking sick. You don't want that because your team could win. That's the difference. If you can only come 3rd, it's fucking sick to come 2nd. If you come 2nd when you could win, it's the fucking worst thing in the world, isn't it? That's a pretty key distinction for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take any of this in a negative light. In fact, I think every coach out there should be aiming to win the role, right? So like for me, if I'm not gonna fucking go for the win, I guess I can say it because you guys said all that. Like if I
can't, like 6 times in a row,
I might get in trouble. I might get in trouble. So basically, if I can't win, why am I competing? Sure. I might as well retire. Like that's my point, you know. And you know, these criticisms, some of them are valid, some of them are not. It's just like you take what you can get and you learn from them. That's all it is, you know. So for sure, I'm not really bothered by any of these comments. It's just more so, I think there's a lot of outrageous statements that are made, especially when it comes to like the game or game specific things, right?
Yeah, sure.
And as for Odo, I think, you know, I actually think that he's still growing. This is why I think that ageism is like a myth. You know, there are things that certain pro players haven't done most of their career, and then they start doing. So, for example, Odo would, we found a top laner, Ragnar. You probably know of him, Dom, because you watch some ERLs, right? From LDLC.
He's the LFL for he's the LDLC. So, he plays with my boy Ica. You know, I love that guy.
Yeah, Ike is actually also a very solid player, I think. But it's kind of hard to find. Yeah, I mean, this year for sure. I think it's hard to find like one-on-one partners. We found him because he's not affiliated with an LEC org. We do a bunch of drills there. Like, there's just a lot of things that he's worked on that just improves on his consistency. And really, it's just all about that journey, I think, to win, right? If Roger Federer can play until he's 40 years old, okay, I think my fucking players can.
Oh, I agree, of course.
Yeah, I think Odo will be fine playing like Zach and Orin when he's like 29. You know, like I don't think that's going to be a thing.
Look at his Jace games as well, though. Like look at when he crashes X wave. Like he's warding wave 2, crashing wave 3, playing the bounce like really well. Like a jungle will cover before he bases, and then he'll get item, and he just played a textbook even in playoff games, I think, and that's really possible. It's just the right practice and the right environment and the right attitude, and I think that's what they were able to do. Hence why I think, you know, when I hear these statements about chokers, I mean, sure, you're respectfully allowed to have that opinion, right? But as an internal person working there and seeing these guys one-on-one, bias aside, you know, good lord, for sure. Like, I think that these guys are capable of winning.
But didn't you just make the argument for why he would be considered a choker? Because his Jace was like insane in playoffs the entire time, and then he plays Jace versus Orin in the final game, and that's the game where he has like the worst Jace game that he's had.
I actually think Jace versus Orin is not easy. That's the thing. Jace versus Orin is actually not easy. Do you think Jace should be solo killed multiple times? Of course not, right? But if you die once or you lose kind of the vibe or the kind of, if you're not in the zone in the game, anything can happen, right? It gets out of control sometimes, and that's why you have these best of fives. It's not, sure. That's why best of ones aren't really set. But did we give those environments in the other games? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, right? Yeah. I don't think we did. And Orin has a lot of gank pressure. If you die once, you fall behind. It's kind of like Malphite, you know. You really need to play well. You really need to play well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Esports Bet has all the major leagues, even has a bunch of the minor ones, the ERLs. But obviously, we're talking about the LEC on here on Best Damn League Shorts. It's a European League Legends show. And I'm going to do a bet between what once upon a time would have been a massive marquee matchup. Someone like Perkz against Humanoid. You've got the Fnatic squad, the Vitality super team. These are two super teams on paper. But here's the problem. As much as Fnatic, yes, they look great this week, but they had some dodgy games in the last one. Vitality still does not look like a coherent team. Perkz is good, but that's not enough. Alfari's a bit dodgy. The bot lane doesn't work, and the jungle actually looks worse now, if anything. So I think these odds for Fnatic are crazy. They have 1.723, and Vitality's 2.084. I'm taking Fnatic on this one, and I'm actually fairly confident. I love these odds, so I'm going to go with my big boy bet. I'm trying to make them more reasonable, like to show you how confident I am, not just doing the same bet every time like I've new. So I'll say 1,000. This is going to be my top bet. I'm going to say Fnatic takes this. I think this is a brilliant price for the favourite, and as much as like Vitality has some players that could potentially do something against Fnatic, they're not as good a team, they're not as good a roster, and I don't think there's any way that they're winning this game as much as it's just a BO1. So if you want to put a bet out there, consider Esports Bet. Anyway, in line with what Dom said, I have a similar perspective. Okay. So being as we've already spent an hour talking about Rogue, let's just talk about the other top teams in LEC and see what SeeEl thinks here. So one team I think would be perfect to talk about, just in light of top teams, throwing, choking, it's got to be fucking Mad Lions. Because here's the problem I have, right? On the last few episodes here, we've actually been like praising Mad quite a lot. Like the Niski swap looks great. Obviously, the quality of their games has improved massively from the previous split. But I have to say, at this point in time, even though earlier I sort of like pointed out like maybe Rogue's wins like fraudulent, because that was like a massive throw by Mad Lions. The problem is this, dude. Like, this is just what Mad Lions does. That wasn't even just about Rogue. Like, what they seem to do is they seem to consistently get, like, early leads and look good, and then the amount of times they throw in the late game is ridiculous. Like, I don't know what's going on with this squad. Like, what do you think on this? SeeEl, start me off on this one. What do you think of the Mad Lions team in this regard?
I think Mad Lions is a really systematic team. I think Mac is one of the people that I would actually work with as an assistant coach. Like, I wouldn't take an assistant coach job anywhere, just to be transparent with you, right? And from my conversations with him, I think he's very good at setting up winning teams, especially like if you look at how Mad plays historically, playing through mid, right? The jungle playing through mid and enabling mid to move. Like this is something that they're very good at and they're working on, right? I think that some of these losses, personally, were bullshit. Like the one that we won, it was kind of, I'm not sure if that should have happened. And also some of these losses could be just that they
against Misfits, mate. Like what the fuck were they doing?
Yeah, but game? I mean, so that was a game where they got like mega outscaled, and I feel like that, like, unless you're a really good team, it's pretty risky to play drafts like that because they had like no damage. I mean, when you're drafting, what do they have? Lissandra, Callista. No, like if that game goes late, you're fucked. Versus what they're against. So the way that I saw that was like, yeah, I mean, they made some mistakes, but I feel like it's kind of the same way when G2 has been drafting like these very hard to execute win conditions, and they don't end up crossing the line. I'm not somebody who takes that like really negatively. That doesn't tell me that you're a bad team. If you're like AFKing and you have all this like agency on the map and you're not like, contesting anything and you're sitting in your turn, that's when I really like, that's what triggers me about teams. I'm like, oh, they're just like out of it, like they're defeated. It feels like Mad Lions was doing stuff and they just overstepped a couple times. And then like, the other, like, so that's 2 of their losses, right? There was the throw versus Rogue, which is, I mean, whatever. Like that's then you have the game where they're mega out drafted versus SK, and the other draft was like El Yoya, or the other game that they lost was El Yoya just having the worst game of all time. Like he's had his worst Lee Sin performance that he'll probably ever have. Like that's something that I don't even judge a player on that. It's like, oh yeah, you had a fucking bad game. Unless I see that multiple times, I don't even care. It's like, okay, yeah, you just played like shit one game. Like it happens to everyone. So, even though they're 4-3, the other thing is strength of schedule. Like they should have been 7-2 in the first half. Like they probably should, because they had a really easy next couple games. And I believe their next couple games are against like
just play like BDS and stuff, don't they? You don't they play the
worst like BDS Astralis, or it's like BDS. Well, they just played Misfits, so it's BDS SK maybe. I don't know. But the point is that they play 2 out of the 3 bottom games.
BDS. Yeah, it's the two of the worst. Yeah.
So I mean, so they're most likely going to be 6-3 in the first half. I think that everything like considered, that's great with what they were from where they were at the beginning of this split, or what they were coming into at the end of last split. So
what do you think, SeeEl? Because basically my problem is this. On the one hand, I actually think there's so many positives, like if they can make it to the playoffs. Like basically they look so good until the moment they start like some of these weird throws or things go wrong late. Like they're actually looking great early on.
I mean, for sure, this team will be a playoffs team. I talked about it in Rich's show as well, like the other one. And I basically said like, Nisqy provides what they need. I'm not too worried about how they look in these games, because building a team is not like a 1 or 2 week thing. It's an entire split thing, and especially because they changed their mid laner, and a team that plays through mid changing their mid laners, it's a big adjustment, Especially, I mean, the fact that they shifted from playing with a rookie into a veteran mid laner, into building a system or rebuilding the system, playing through this guy, right, and him moving and enabling things on the map. I really think that this will be a playoffs team. I expect to compete against them in the playoffs, and I'm not too worried. I don't really judge things just by the scoreline, right? So, because for example, I really think that our 5-2 scoreline isn't necessarily the most accurate to where we are skill wise. And I mean, look at G2 and Split 1, right? Like I think there was a lot of question marks around whether or not this bot lane Flacadem and Targamas would be good enough to win the whole thing, and they proved to be good enough, right? So they were like 4th in the regular season. These things happen, and I mean, I really expect that team and the coaching staff around that team will be able to build something formidable.
One thing I did find a bit dodgy about Mad Lions though is in that Misfits game, mate, that fucking Armut gangplank looked fucking. That looked gross.
Yeah, that was some really
his champion
fights.
pool looks pretty limited now. Now the Wolves are top playing it. His champion pool looks limited, mate.
I mean, he was playing well until he wasn't. I mean, he just got into some of those team fights, and man, the barrels were just all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. Yeah, I mean, look.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Armut, he's just generally a player who gets better in pressure moments. At least that's what I've observed in his career. His 3 splits. It just sucks that they didn't actually make it to playoffs. But I feel like he'll be fine. I mean, his Gangplank looks sus here, but when he played Gangplank versus Adam in the finals, looked pretty fucking good right there. So I think it just depends on the game.
There's time. Like Odo couldn't play this champ, and he played 100 games of this in solo queue and made it work, right? And there's still time for him to adjust if GP stays in the meta. So I don't think that's necessarily that important to look at. You can always
For me, also, like, just Misfits in general. I mean, Misfits obviously had decent score. I think they 2-0'd this week, right? So they had some wins, but the thing about Misfits is, like, you can tell that they have figured out the Band-Aid solution, and they're already, just sinking their fucking heels in. They're just, all right, we're going to draft a tank top every fucking game. Fuck everything else. Tank top, scaling mid laner. If Schlatten gets Lee Sin or whatever the fuck he can play, like, we're going to put that in there, and we're just going to just play our style, whatever we can do to win. Because
they're basically doing what in NA 100 Thieves is doing. It's like, right, this is just the most simple way we can win with these comfort picks. Do this. Do what works, basically.
I mean, it's a short split. Like, it is not a long split. You got 8 weeks. They had a really bad first 2 weeks, and I think that they thought if they go 0-2 this last week, it's fucking doomed. Like, they're not going to be able to make playoffs with the competition, with how the other teams end up looking. Because, like, maybe Vitality looks a little sketchy. They probably look like the weakest of the top 6 playoff teams. But, if you're 1-6 and you have to make up 3 games in the back half, like, that just seems almost unfathomable for them. So I think that other teams will start doing that as the split goes on. Like, when they feel like they really need to just put their best foot forward, they'll limit their champion pools. They'll play what's best for them. But I just don't think that the other teams are that stressed. Like, when I look at everyone XL through G2, so, like, that's to me the top 5, right? XL, Rogue, Fnatic, Mad Lions, G2. None of those teams feel like they actually are worried about making playoffs. Maybe only Vitality is the team that I'm like, maybe they need to, like, kind of hone things in. And I just think that that's a natural progression for a team that is struggling. Like, you just have to Band-Aid everything and forget trying to be the best possible team. Like, sure, that's going to limit your upside, but, like, you got to get wins on the fucking board or you're not even, like, nothing's happening. Your season's just over.
Oh, by the way, just before we leave the Mad Lions topic, one other thing I'll say as well is this. One, I thought in both the games this week as well, Unforgiven just looks super legit, mate. I think he had, because sadly everyone went out of their way last split to give all the fucking people like fucking Schlatten votes for all rookie. Like, this guy's actually underrated. He's just a very good player, mate. He's coming to the LEC. He's looked good from the very beginning of the last split. He looks good now with a fucking player change. And now their actual bot lane's activated. And by the way, that fucking move Kaiser pulled off against fucking Caps in that G2 game. What a fucking sick fucking outplay that was. That flashed over the wall. So the Zoe had to come back and he got him caught. Like, the whole team looks like they've leveled up. Everyone looks better on Mad now. Except Armo.
I know Unforgiven has a lot of respect within at least the pros that I talk to. There's some like Unforgiven is one of those players where the pros will tell you, like, oh, I think mechanically he's one of the best players in EU. That's at least what I've heard from multiple times, from multiple different people.
Maybe
like,
it's just fans sleeping on then. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that, like, at least amongst pros, they think this guy's very good. And then, it just feels like he's one of those players that's just feeling himself right now. He's performing well in games. He hit rank 1 in
Champion pool looks great as well. Look at all the champions he plays every split.
Zeri, Twitch. I mean, he looks like he's just in the zone right now. He's really trying to make up for that first split because, it just seems like he doesn't want that to be his career. So I respect him. I think he's a solid player for sure.
I mean, all props to him, but I actually think that a lot of props also goes to the environment that they create there, right? Because personally, I always thought Unforgiven was one of the top ADs from ERLs, but I had actually quite a few ADs above him, right? I think Jack Spectra looked really solid.
He's a pretty hyped player, sure.
Give us the Rich Flacked list. Give us the 30 ERL AD carries that were all.
No, I don't think it was 30. I don't think it was 30.
Who were the other ones? Yeah, who were the other ones?
I mean, like, it was a while ago. I remember the top laners because I remember having to talk about this in Vitality as I was leaving. But the AD, I don't remember specifically off the top of my head. I would have to. I think a couple of them definitely looked better in the RLs, like Jack Spectra. I think Woolite in lane with Jack Troll looked pretty good. But that being said, he's been in LEC before. There's probably a lot of baggage there. That's why they didn't want him. And then there was also, I think, Smiley. He's actually really he was rank 1, like 70% win rate. And given the right environment, I think he could definitely be a really solid player, right? Like, at least starting out, middle bottom of the pack LEC level even now, and if he played 1 split or 2 splits of LEC, he could be a lot better than where he is. So for me, there were a few 80 carries that I put close to, if not slightly above him. But it's huge props to him that he's able to get in there. The environment is probably very good for him to learn also, and then just kind of step it up and just play, right?
Another thing that people need to know about Unforgiven is that he wasn't somebody that was on, like, an insane ERL team. you know, he was on like a middle of the pack ARL. I think it was like 5th or 6th in German league, which wasn't even considered the top league. So
nothing. Yeah.
But
yeah,
Diplex was also 6th place when he first started in his team in Prime League, and I think that Diplex is one of the best mid laners in ERL right now, like by far, like if not the best for a little bit of time, right? Okay. Personally speaking, like I thought that he was better than Rika, and so like placing doesn't really matter. You can really see how good they are through solo queue and through scrims and this kind of stuff.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, what about this then? How about we talk about the team who also share the top spot in the league? And look, I agree with Dom. If I have to like spiritually pick the best team, it probably is G2. But in terms of like just raw aesthetics, XL has looked excellent so far this split. Me and Dom have talked over the last few episodes, waxing lyrical about them. So SeeEl, give me your thoughts. Obviously, your team was able to get a win off them, but XL generally, like for example, are they actually like? I get the vibe from the interviews I've seen. Like even in scrims, they're playing like this. They're just one of the top teams now. Are they legit? Can they win LEC, for example? You believe in it?
No, I don't, because obviously I think we should win, right?
Okay.
I mean, like I have no doubt in my mind.
Contender status though, because obviously before they were like barely playoffs. Now is XL like a true contender?
I think they're a top 3 contender for sure. And then playoffs, you never know what happens, right?
Sure.
I remember when I first started my split, like my jungler, who was my key player, like when I first started coaching in my very first split in Oceania, my jungler just randomly got really sick from like some stomach bug, and he was like playing half vomiting. So I mean, you never know what happens in playoffs, right? I mean, do I think they look pretty solid? Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if they'll win though, because I think G2, Fnatic, us look a bit better than them at the moment.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, I have the same take that I've had the whole time, where I just feel like they have decent cohesion. It seems like they're on the same page right now, but I think that the players that they have limit how good they can possibly be.
Except Mickey. I think Mickey's for sure still really good.
No, I always talk about the solo lanes. I think the solo lanes just aren't as good as like when I look at, and this is what we said every week, when I look at, I mean, obviously Niski Armut's going to be the one where people are like, oh, how good is Armut? Maybe they're not as good. But when I look at like Odoamne Larson, when I look at Wonder Humanoid, when I look at BB Caps, like I don't know, I just can't imagine them being better in like a clutch situation in playoffs when like, there's actually like volatility in the lanes.
I think XL bot lane's good though. I think they can carry, and I actually think that Finn and Duck are underrated. They're not that bad. They're pretty solid for sure. So who knows? Like if they're able to build a really strong like identity, and play both sides, because I think Finn's very solid at playing like super volatile matchups. Who knows what will happen, right? And I
feels like that's not what he's been doing recently, though. It feels like he's just been kind of like weak siding for the most part, like or in GP, like that type of stuff.
I mean, I think a lot of GP lanes are actually super volatile. Like for example, like GP versus Gwen, you need to push in a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. So I think it just really depends. I think Patrick, Mickey X are really solid bot lane at the moment, and Mickey actually really impressed me, like because I thought that this guy was not that good coming out of 2021. I had my doubts about him, to be completely honest, and he just showed that he's still a top player. So maybe something was going on in G2, especially since that bot lane. I know like Reckless has his way of viewing the game, right, with the certain AD carries he likes to play with Jhin and this kind of stuff. So, yeah, they have a good chance, I think.
Okay, right. Since as I alluded to before, I think most people think, low key, like as Dom said, who gives a fuck if the record of G2's 4-3? Like the games they win, they look fucking good, and like crucially, the two best players over the split is the jungle and mid, and it makes the fucking dynamic work. The team just works. So I've got a quick question for you, Dom. Right, this isn't like the weekly defend Broken Blade, but like that Aatrox pick was a bit of a what?
Yeah, it was a weird Aatrox pick for sure. And then for me, it was just one of those games where it's like you're playing Aatrox into GP and you lose your flash and your pot, and you have to TP back level 1. It's like it's just not like every fucking Aatrox player I've ever met is rage quitting that game in solo queue. Like no one is playing the fucking Doran Shield versus GP Aatrox without flash and without a pot. Like that is just crazy levels of like you're getting fucked level 1. So I mean that game's really rough for him to play. And then when you look at like the like other games they've lost, I mean, it's just the games that G2 has lost. You don't feel like are actual loss. It's like, okay, they played Vi versus BDS. Like, what the fuck? Like, Jankos is not a Vi player. Like, sure, people are trying to like get into the meta, but I never like, dude, everyone looks like shit on Vi these days. I'm watching every region. Whenever I see a Vi, I'm always fucking groaning on my stream. Like, please pick anything else, man. Like, even when you see it do well, it just never seems like it works out the same way it does in scrims. Like, people are playing into Lissandra. People are playing into all these ridiculous matchups. I believe in that game, wasn't he playing it into Lissandra? He was playing into something fucked up. Where I just don't really like believe that would ever be an optimal situation for the pick. So I feel like G2 knows what they're doing. I think they're confident in their position within the league. And, if the shit hits the fan and they get a couple more losses, I think they're just going to go back to like, okay, we'll draft Orin, we'll draft GP. Like, we know what wins. Caps will play whatever mage. Jankos will just have like solid fucking games, and they're just going to take the wins that they need. So I'm not worried about them. I think that they're a solid team. I think they're still like the team to beat. I think that they're the team that no one really wants to play in playoffs right now.
What do you think, SeeEl?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Vi example is a good example because I think that maybe it's like scrim data. I'm not too sure myself. The problem is the clear is so slow, and they handshake you in a lot of like fights 2v2 in
so
scrims.
Fucking slow.
But if you skirmish a lot, this champ is actually quite good, especially if you want to lock down like super mobile champs like Zeri, right? So I think what happened was maybe the games didn't play out like they expected. But when I see these games, I'm just like, this is really not how they're going to look in playoffs, right? So I mean, every top team is kind of the same from my experience. Like when I was in LFL, right, it was the same. Like on the top heavy, these top heavy regions, wherever you go, they're always the same. They have their own meta. They think about how they want to play the game, and they're just preparing for playoffs, basically, I think. And that's what's happening with G2, right? So
what I have is they've still got one of the best upsides you could have in the whole LEC, which is Caps looks like the best player in LEC. He looks amazing. Dude, he even looked good in the fucking game they just lost. Like, he was doing a great job. Like, what's the problem? In fact, I thought like that Zoe performance he had against Mad Lions, he had some banger fucking moment. Like, he was making Jankos' job like twice as easy because he was just fucking landing that bobble on the El Yoya every bloody time he came past the lane. Like, that looked great. So to me, the upside is this. Jankos is probably the best jungler right now and gets Caps ahead all the time. When Caps is ahead, he carries the game. The problem I have is that does seem like it's going to be the primary thing that must happen for them to win the split again, because the problem is there's too many games now that don't look like the beginning of the split or MSI. Like, oh, everyone's looking great. Like, there's games, Broken Blades had a bunch of questionable games. Targamas' Zillion was fucking shit. He didn't even use the ult one time. He just died for no reason. Like, I look at their team. The problem with their team is this. They have games where everyone looks great, and they have games where it's just Jankos and fucking Caps. Jankos and Caps are winning a lot of games in LEC, but that's my only question. I don't feel like that. Here's the difference. When I look at Rogue, Fnatic, maybe even XL, like, these teams can play through most of the players in the game. They can play a bunch of start. Like, I feel like G2's a bit more limited. It's a layman's take. Give me your thoughts, SeeEl. Come on.
I mean, I think Jankos, I think most good teams have good junglers because it might look like Caps is smurfing the lane, but what's really happening is Jankos is going in, finding the enemy jungle, making it super easy to play like these volatile lanes, and he's always on the right side of the map. So I actually think he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, even though he gets a lot of credit already, So yeah, Caps is amazing. Like, they're setting up the lane correctly and all this, but the way Jankos plays a game, I think he deserves a lot of praise through that. And I think that Targamas has always been.
He should probably be an MVP candidate, right?
Yeah, I think Targamas is. Targamas and Broken Blade are both very good laners, right? I mean, I have some thoughts about Flackard. Maybe he does some things that most AD carries do, like making mistakes with wave management, for example. But I think that really this G2 squad can play through both sides. Flackard has the mechanics, to carry for sure, and they have the right lanes to play around the sides. So for me, it's more like if mid jungle is winning and mid jungle is playing through sides, of course the game is going to be easy and they're going to look better. But it doesn't mean that they need to always play through Caps. I don't think that's the case at all. I think BB looked really good in a lot of situations, and BB has always been a very top Western top laner for many seasons now, right? Mm-hmm. Even when people weren't giving him credit, he was very, very good, I think. So I think they can play through both sides.
Holy, perfect. That's what I like to hear. I just for the record, on like the Crackdown, I was always considered the biased, delusional BB defender because he's obviously somebody who's like one of my IRL friends. He's very, very good. He's very, very good. I always thought he was just exceptionally talented.
When I started my career, when I went to Korea, Korea. Anyway, so
Aussie accent, it gets you.
The first thing that I did was actually our Red Bull sponsor. We had the same Red Bull sponsor in that team, and that was with and we saw the DRX people. That's when CV Max was there and stuff. So I actually got to see a lot of stuff there. And at the time, BB was playing in Korea, and my top laner was playing in Korea as well, like scrimming Korea. And I saw how he was playing. I think his Camille and Aatrox are very, very high level. I think the way that he manages the wave and thinks about the game is very, very high level for sure. I mean, maybe not the game because I haven't worked with him, but at least like lane stuff. He's definitely up there, and he doesn't fall off going into team fights.
I've got an interesting sidebar for you. So you know that feature, Dom, that they did as a skit for this week, where it was the one where it was like the Magic the Gathering version of LEC, where it was like all those cards in a trading card game. Everyone knows the fucking like Yu-Gi-Oh style and Pokemon card games, right? When they did that, they had a joke within that, right? That I wanted to make a real topic though. If you remember, there was a joke where I think it was Quickshot had like 2018 caps, and then he was like, but then I'm going to upgrade it to 2022 caps. So there's my question, which is, which version of caps do you actually think was the best caps? Because they're implying in that video, I'm sure it is after he's just won the split and looked great in the far blah blah blah, sure, but they're implying that current day caps is the best version of caps. What do you think, Dom?
The best version of caps is 2020 caps. 2020 summer caps is the
best. That was actually going to be my take. I had that written down. Dude, when he swapped back to mid, if people don't remember, that was the split where he just never had the fucking craps games. He just smurfed the whole time, didn't he?
I mean, his team was also, I think that was one of the games where like his team was also playing like shit most games, and he was just carrying like all these ridiculous games. I mean, this is the game.
That was the split, if people remember, where they could have not made playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one.
They almost, like, we're not going to make playoffs. There was realistic situations, like a lot of them where they didn't make it. I think they were maybe even like 5-8 at a point or something like really, really bad. And he would just build a Soul Stealer every game on every single mage in the game and just smurf on everyone. Like, that to me was the best version of caps. I think 2022 caps, like, he's a little bit more polished, but like maybe 2018 caps had more upside. I don't know. Like, it's really like, I don't really care about that. To me, best version of caps, 2019 caps, and then 2020 caps, I think was like the absolute peak.
Fair enough. Because the reason I bring that up is I actually thought it was a bit whack last split, where before he went supernova in the fucking playoffs, everyone was just doing that whack thing where they were like, well, you have to understand, League of Legends as a game has come a long way. No one can be that far ahead, and sort of the gaps closed. Like, no, he just played worse, and he was not playing any of the traditional caps carry champions. What a surprise when he suddenly gets his fucking form back and goes on to all the hard carry champions. He's a fucking monster again. What a surprise. It's almost like it wasn't that whack angle, guys.
Yeah, no, I like how Caps just proved that angle. They're like, well, he can't do that anymore. And then he just starts doing it. It's like, oh, so he was just...
Literally 2 weeks later, he just started doing it, Tom, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, his fans actually, like, he proved his own fans wrong.
I know. The joke is, you guys actually doubted him, and you're his fans, for fuck's sake. Like, we were actually giving him the fucking room that he could be better. I know, it's brilliant, isn't it? I love it.
Yeah. That's such a fucked up way to think about it.
It's true. Jesus. I know. By the way, as a random aside as well, I'll even add in a similar joke along those lines, though. You know, if you're a fan, like last year, obviously Mad Lions would be the example. You know, if you're a fan of the team that's clutch and then the other team chokes and you beat them in the finals, if you just keep saying, haha, they choke their shit, you've just denigrated your own accomplishment, you moron. You actually want to say, no, they're really good, actually. They might even be better than us, but we just beat them, because it makes your win better. You actually want to talk up your opponent, guys. Think it through. You haven't thought this one through at all, have you? Why would you want to be the guy who only beat someone who's shit and choked? That implies you're not the best. It's just fucking fans and players, mate. They don't even know their own arguments today. SeeEl, what do you think? Who was the best version of Caps?
I mean, I think Caps is one of those generational players where it doesn't matter how old he is. Like, the older he gets, he's like fine wine, you know, like Faker in a way. So the game is
all right. Okay. All right.
A few years back, Faker was still like, really good. Yeah, sure.
The thing is, like, if Faker 2013 was way ahead of his time. Okay, I'm not denying that. And I'm not denying mechanically he was very good back then, but the game has evolved, so the competition is just better. Like, that's just how it works, and people catch up, you know? You didn't have it. I mean, when Chovy, when Faker was playing, and he was still winning world championships 2014, 2015, Chovy was a Cassiopeia one trick in Grandmaster, right? So So, like, really, I think the accurate statement for a lot of these players that are very, very good at adapting, very solid mechanically, they can still do a lot of the things that they were doing back then. For me, at least, for the top players, it's the same. It's just that the competition's gotten much better, so they look worse. And then you have to take into consideration that I think Caps had the most stacked Western roster in the history of Western rosters.
That's true.
In 2019. Yeah. So it's very hard to see objective truth behind how good he really was in 2019, because I think everyone on that roster was very, very good, right? Oh. Very, very good. So I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'd always take the 2022 Caps, purely because I think that the game is evolving, and he's just one of those players that really just adapt to the meta well and learn the game very, very quickly.
I mean, you have to take the 2022 Caps in 2022 versus the 2018 Caps in 2018. Like, that's how at least
of course you go to 2018 then, of course. Yeah, like why wouldn't you take a season 3 faker, right? I mean, like, what? Yeah. How do you lose with this guy? You can have like 4 bots in the game and you'll win, right? Okay. Sure. Like, people were like, "Whoa, you can flash and press E on Ahri at the same time." It's insane, you know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's not how the question is supposed to be interpreted. That was just my own.
Yeah,
interpretation.
By the way, on that topic, the idea of, like, obviously the game goes on and people improve, because that's another thing people do forget about. You notice they also do that, Dom. If a player's been established, like he's played a couple of years and generally like he's a known quantity, people act like he is now set statically. He can never improve. All that can happen is it's just raw form. He's either like it's top form or he's bad. They never learn, they never improve, they never adapt, they never, like you said about Odo, like getting champions you've never played before, or playing like a style you haven't played before. Because another angle that I think, this is what's sad, we're all giving Caps his flowers now because G2's really good. I'll tell you who's not getting his flowers this year, and it makes me really sad, and it's Perkz. Right, look, if you want to diss Perkz, here's the angle you can diss Perkz on. If he really was behind picking the players in this super team, well then, yeah, ultimately the outcome will be his fault. He put together this fucking roster. But if you want to look individually as a mid laner, I still think in spring he was mad underrated. He had a whole bunch of really good games that were really consistent in the regular split. And this regular split, dude, he still looks really good. He's a top mid laner. In terms of raw, just mid lane, play the lane, play, like, yes, obviously they're not winning fucking team fights. It's Vitality, isn't it? What do you want? It's not a miracle work. He's just a mid laner. So I actually think, no joke, even though fans are going to meme like, lol, fucking Perkz having another shit year, like, this is actually a good individual year, mate. I think he looks good.
I mean, I don't think he's playing bad at all. I think that people just don't like Perkz. Like, they just don't like his attitude.
Dude, I think for real, going to NA and trash talking, that actually changed how people like vibe with him on. Like, before that, he was mega loved on Reddit. Before that, like, that seems to have just turned like, so basically people prey on his downfall now. That's the vibe I get.
Yeah, I mean, people just want to see the cocky guy lose, I think. They're like, oh, he thinks he's so good. They're like, look at this now. Look, here's the thing that doesn't make sense. If you're going to say Alphari is, like, super shit this year, then it can't be that Perkz is also super shit based off their, like, results. You know? Like, if the bot lane's bad and the top lane's bad, then that means that Perkz is fucking good for getting them to this spot.
And they just fired their junglers. Yes, who's carrying these games, guys? How are they winning these games?
Look, he's been the least of my concerns with the roster. I thought that they had no jungle support synergy at all in spring. Like, it just never happened. Like, it never worked out for some reason. They're never able to sync bases and do the same thing at the same time. And then this split, I feel like they just downgraded their jungler. I feel like Haru is just, I don't know what he's doing, man. Like, I'm watching some of these games and he looks like one of those guys that is just jungling.
Oh, some of the
try to not look bad. Well, I mean, you can't be doing nothing as a jungler. How are you down in objectives, farm, kills, ganks, everything? It's not like you're playing against these like super snowbally like carry champions like Kiana or some shit, and he's getting like 4 kills early game, and it's like, oh my god, well now he's just like able to do everything better than me. Like, he's playing into like Wukong and like normal jungler, or like he's playing the Wukong side into like a Viego. Like, these are not matchups that snowball ridiculously out of control with like very minimal resources. So when I'm watching his play, it looks like he is just trying to like not look bad most of the time, and it actually like, yeah, it's actually really tough to watch. I saw a lot of people were commenting on it. I saw Veigar V2 had a tweet about it too, where it's just like, man, like, his scoreline looks good, but he is not playing well. I mean, even like the Bel'Veth game where he got MVP, looked like he was first time in the champion. Looked like he just didn't know like how to play it. That's at least what I would say. Like, I was literally watching Broxa play solo queue, and Broxa looked like he had more of an idea of how to play Bel'Veth than Haru did.
Just the fact that I know that's like a low-key diss, but like, someone else might be like, oh, watch that. I'm a professional pro. What's wrong with that? Like, I get it.
It's not even supposed to be a low-key diss. Like, that was just facts.
It's sort of, though. It has a grain of a diss at least.
Look, he's like one of the only junglers that still play solo queue on stream. Like, no one else has the fucking mental to play this role on stream. So, you know what? Like, I was watching him play it. He played a lot of it, and I was like, oh, he's actually like, you know, he knows how to play some Bel'Veth. Did not look like Haru knew what he was doing. You know, it just kind of looked like he was cleaning up kills, and the champion is just fucking OP.
Listen, SeeEl, you can comment on any angle you want here. What do you think about Vitality?
I mean, it was my old org, right? And I actually really like the org. So it's I think Perkz is. I mean, I just don't believe in the idea that like you have forms. I think it's just you either learn or you don't, and you have a good routine. Like if you look after yourself as a professional player, your form is dependent on like how well you learn and how well you train yourself, right? Like in any other sport. And that's what defines form, like the process, right? So for me, I mean, Perkz still looks very, very good. I think this roster on paper should be a lot better than they actually are. And I still think that they're not really tapping into their potential. Like I thought that Selfmade was a very good player, and I thought that he was better than Haru, to be completely honest with you. I mean, yeah, from my perspective, but at the same time, I was like, if it's a difference in how they view the game, right, philosophically, when you have this with players, it can be hard on a team like Vitality, because my vibe with Vitality is that it would be a player-run team, right? So you don't have. I mean, I think the coach is doing a lot too, but like it's not the case where the coach has the.
I don't know.
Yeah,
anything about this
I mean, okay. To be completely honest, I talked to Mephisto when I was in LFL, and I learned a few things about the game off him. So I don't think he's like clueless or anything like that. I think he knows the game. It's just that when you have a player like Perkz, you have to have a very, very specific kind of personality to get him to do what you want, and you need to be very good at the game. If not, you're playing a facilitator, and I think Grabs was a facilitator in that way, and I think Mephisto is probably like a mix of both, right? But the main point is if they have a difference in opinion on how to play the game, Perkz wouldn't look as good as he should be, and I think what happened is they're just putting all the big eggs in the Perkz basket to kind of enable mid jungle, and then they thought that everything else would solve their problems. I think it's too early for me to judge like how the games would go or how this team would act, because as I said, I still think it's week 3. You have another 5-6 plus playoff weeks to work on things, and you know, I would guess that they only probably trained like 3 or 4 weeks or 5 weeks together max, right?
Yes.
And sometimes you need a little bit longer than that to get in together. So I'm going to hold my reservations about that. I personally think that, you know, Perkz pickup, whatever the org is, if you can afford it, it's not a bad pickup at all. It's always going to be a good pickup. This is a player where I just look at him, I watch him play, and I just know that he's adapting to the meta very well. If you look at him in the LCS, I think that was the case as well. Right, and these type of players that will be around a very long time, and they'll be good for a very long time, whatever it is. And the biggest hint for that was when his team was completely inting and he just locked a Galio. You know, he went down 100 CS and looked terrible, but you know, it just shows his mentality that, oh yeah, I just have to pick something that moves so that I can help unlock the map, you know, and get vision for my team. Right, so it didn't look amazing. It was like the worst matchup possible, but he's willing to do that. So for me, this guy's still really, really good. I think he still wants to win really, really badly, and if he was in a top team, he'd probably look like a god, right? So I'm going to hold my reservations on Vitality. I'm not sure how things will play out.
Put Bowen, put my boy in, and let.
I mean, I actually think
why not at this point?
I mean, I've watched both VODs. That's the thing. It's not gonna like. I think he's mechanically very solid. I'm not too sure about how he thinks about the game. I think that Korean junglers look good because they're very, very intelligent about how they understand lane states, and they're actually very intelligent about showing their position. At least the top junglers, right? And a big kind of misconception is that Korean junglers are good overall. They're just way better, but that's not the case at all. Like, I think that even Korea is a very top-heavy region because the lower teams are just being exported immediately to China. They have like 16 teams or something there, right? Like, these teams are also top-heavy, and the difference between like a top 3, top 4 jungler and the rest is huge. Is huge. Just like, for example, not showing your position as a jungler and like avoiding wards and stuff like this, like these nuanced things that you don't think are small completely dictates how the game is played. Sure. And yeah, so I'm not sure just bringing in a bow would fix the problem. I think that there needs to be a lot of systems and a lot of other things that need to be implemented.
How many times you said systems? You're prepping for the C9 job. I can already feel it.
There you go.
There it is. He's getting all the names out of the way.
I mean, I could have gone to NA as a head coach, right? I would. I wouldn't go there. Oh, I mean, I could have gone there for almost double my salary. So, I mean, it's not something that I would I would do. I mean, I want to compete in the best region possible. I want to compete in the best possible team that I think that can win.
Sure.
And that's always
he's going to LCK. He's going to LCK. He's going to brush up on that Korean, and here it is.
No, my Korean's not going to.
The thing you even say though about like not showing on the map, that's something else I've even noticed. In international competition, you will always see there'll be like one group stage game where some like godlike fucking Chinese or Korean jungler just finds like the fucking 10 pixels that are on the edge of like a ward's fucking vision and sneaks past and gets some like crazy mid lane gank off or whatever. It happens every single tournament. It seems like they always have like the little edge on you, you know.
Yeah, Malrang's the best at it in our region by far.
Yeah, Malrang, that is one of Malrang's strengths for sure. There's a game I distinctly remember is the Hecarim game where he got completely fucked and he like lost multiple camps and he knew exactly where the ward was and he pathed like 3 camps top into bot lane and he ended up just like getting a kill. Yeah,
that was GG. That was GG at 3 minutes if we didn't do that. I think.
Yeah. That was the game where I was like, yeah, this is a really good game for Malrang. This is something where like, you know, he's super fucked and if he doesn't do this, then the game is fucking doomed. So, I mean, yeah, there's definitely those aspects. But one thing I was going to say is that like you see that from like middle to bottom tier Chinese teams. You know, like that's just part of jungling. You know, like if they know where a ward is, yeah, I mean, fucking ward jump over Dragon Pit, do whatever you need to do to get it. I mean, you can see it almost every fucking game. Even like the bad junglers, like fucking, I love Ultra Prime for no reason. This team fucking sucks. I love them. They have Hacker. He is. Probably
he's been around quite a few years, yeah, sure.
He's been around for a long time, number one. Number two, this guy has
he's
no
a maniac,
hands.
Isn't he? I know.
After 15 minutes, he'll just lose you the game solo. I mean, the whole meme in China is that his nickname is Ultraman because in that show, it's like the Power Rangers, they lose their power after a certain period of time. And that's what the Chinese fans call him because he just loses his power. By
the way, Chinese memes in esports are number one. China is number one when it comes to memes because for memes, the fans are just so good at coming up with really funny memes. Like I think that one about that top laner 369 is fucking incredible. Where it's like a dice and he just rolls and he either is a 3, a 6, or a 9, depending on like how good he is in the game. So if he rolls and it's a 3, you just fuck and he throws the whole game for you. Like what a great fucking meme! Whoever came up with that?
They're ruthless.
It's more creative than we have in the West. In the West, we're just going like, lol, Jan Cosmos' spears. Like, that's not even a meme. That's just shit, guys. Like, come up with something.
Yeah, no, it's actually kind of fucked up. I mean, you remember back in season 5, they had the God V arrow where he accidentally arrowed backwards on Varus, and they had it just like going around the entire world and coming back and just hitting like people from the back. I don't know. I thought that was great. Didn't they start the whole like they should swim back memes where it's like LGD should swim back? Like
I forget though if it was China or Korea. It was definitely one of the two of them that did that though. That was a magnificent one. Right, let's do this then. The last team we have to talk about of the playoff teams, we'll just make this the last team, is Fnatic. But here's the thing that's interesting, SeeEl. On most of the past episodes of the show, it was about all the flaws of Fnatic because obviously they look like on paper the roster's amazing, but then in the server they always look a bit disconnected or maybe this player's not playing well. I actually think we've caught you on the week where Fnatic looks the best. Dude, this last week, that game they had against G2, that might be the best game they played all split long. That looked really fucking good, mate. That was like, normally as well, when Fnatic won games last split, it would be all messy as shit. That looked clean. Dude, that looked really good. What do you think, SeeEl?
I'm not going to comment because I think I have a very strong idea on where the issues lie, and that's a competitive advantage. I don't want to give that away.
All right, fucking whatever. Go ahead, Dom. Jump in.
Yeah. I feel the same way, actually. Like, I think that it's a competitive advantage for me to give away anything. And, you know, as a student of the game myself, my value is based off, you know, my ability to potentially coach in the future. So I'm in the same boat.
Oh, put it this way. That whole fucking Razork topic, that actually looked legitimately solved in that game, mate. That fucking Viego game was very good. It actually looked like he was connected to the team.
Look, Hylissang, every single time he's got his Zilean, and it's been in a good situation for Rakan, it's looked pretty good for the entire year. That's like one of the champions that he's performed
on. That pick works for him for sure, yeah.
Yeah, which is strange because you'd think that, like, you know, he would be better just naturally on these engaged champions. Yes. But yeah, I mean, recently I feel like his Renata and his Zilean have probably been his best picks this season. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I never know how high to be on Fnatic. I mean, I feel like on paper coming into it, I thought they were going to be the best team. They've shown nothing to me recently that tells me that prediction was going to be accurate. Like, I would still assume that they're just going to have the same second, third place, probably go to Worlds, underperform. They're just going to be like every one of these super teams, man. I don't know what it is with these super teams, but TL, Fnatic, we have it in China with BLG and LNG. These fucking teams, I don't know. They're just so disappointing to watch. Like, you want to see something out of them, and they'll show it to you every now and then. but it's never consistent enough where you're like, okay, they're in a great
game,
form.
this G2 game was a tease for you. Then it was like what you wish they would be, but they probably won't be most games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You know, they're gonna.
Sure.
We're just gonna see something horrific in like the upcoming weeks where it's like, yep, there it is. That's the game where Hillsong and Razork are just running it down again. And
I'll say it's definitely the outlier to the pattern. So when I think about the game, so obviously Wunder was fucking carrying like a motherfucker because he's had a great week generally. Razork was like the MVP of the game. Humanoid was doing fine in CS and getting some good team fights off. Upset was just the shit anyway, like he always is. And then Hillsong almost never died. Like, when's that ever going to happen? All 5 of those things all at once for Fnatic. Like, that is the problem, Dom. It is a little bit too good to be true.
It's like assembling the Infinity Stones.
I can't totally buy it. I know, exactly. I can't totally believe that's going to happen. I don't know. What do you think as a general team, though, SeeEl? Do you have any thoughts on them as an overall team?
I mean, they're very good. I mean, they should be a lot better, but I think there are some cohesion and timing issues and some things that, as I said, I can't really talk about. I think because I'm competing against them and also because I study them extensively, the points that I would bring up in this conversation will be very specific on like certain things that they do, and I don't think it's good to like talk about it.
What do you think about how good Wunder is then? Because he obviously on his Gragas, that was already a signature champion, but he's looked amazing when he's played these last few weeks.
His top laner is good. It's good. I mean, I'm not sure how he would go against an Asian top laner, to be honest, but I think he's definitely solid.
All right, we gotta put the question to you. You know,
yeah.
So last year there was a really controversial topic on who was better, Adam or Wunder, because you got to remember Adam solo killed them multiple times in playoffs, and everyone said it's the passing of the torch.
Yes,
Adam is the king. Wunder, dog shit. Who's better right now, Adam or Wunder?
Wunder.
Okay, all right. Well, that settles it.
Also, by the way, has anyone noticed the trend here? All those fans last year who were like, why would anyone sign Wunder? Why would anyone sign Mickey X? Y'all have no eye test. Y'all don't even know games. You know, it was way more likely eventually these players get good again than just be bad forever. Be bad for the rest of their whole career. You rather take ERL players over Mickey X and fucking Wunder. Like, go ahead and do it if you want to, but I don't get that approach at all, personally.
I was one of the Mickey X people, to be honest. But like, my philosophy is a little more hardcore, and obviously we're not implementing this in Rogue, so I can still talk about it, right? It's like, for me, there are so many talents and potential players in this region and in any competitive sport, right? And I remember talking to a performance coach, Fabian, you might know him. He was the Excel's like performance coach, and he was telling me like how many players you think there are in football, like in a final team. And I'm not a big football guy, so I didn't know. And he said 50. There are 50 players total in LEC. So to be in the LEC, you're the elite of the elite of the elite, right? Even though we don't look like it sometimes, that's just a fact, right? So for me, motivation is a really big thing. And I think that sometimes, and part of the reason why these super teams don't work is because the environment and the motivation and the kind of attitude and the way that you carry yourself, like all these things matter, right? And I always say this to my I always say this to my players as well, right? In every team I've been on, like every click, every decision, every gesture, right? Body language, every little thing that you do in the game impacts whether or not you're going to be a championship team. Okay. And for me, whether or not this player is good, is there any guarantee that there won't be another new Trimby, who looked fantastic in spring, by the way, right? And has looked mechanically good for a very long time. So is there any guarantee that's the case? I mean, look at Jojo Pyun, right? They just won the LCS with it. Is there a guarantee that there's not going to be another Mickey X, but better, with a better mentality that's more hungry to compete? I don't know. And that was kind of part of the reason why I'm very hesitant. I was very hesitant about it. Obviously, I was wrong about that, and I think he's shown that he's a very good player still, and he's a good leader, right? But I do think that there is a reasonable point to be made about bringing these ERL players in, because I think some of them have a lot of potential, right? And just a quick note, and I'm talking too much, but there was that point about choking and stuff, right? Let's look at Shugenda, for example. This guy looked so good in ERLs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then he went to Vitality and he looked like a choker. My experience with Shugenda wasn't that he was a choker. I'm confident that if I had him in the LFL, we would have won the whole thing.
You thought he was bad. Oh wait, never mind.
No, I thought
it's a joke, man.
Okay, no. I mean, I thought that he, I just looked at him, I talked to him, and I said, okay, he just needs a different type of routine, different type of preparation, different type of training, coaching environment. And I think that if we had him in the LFL, we would have won the whole thing. And I think that he is an LEC level top laner. So I mean, is it really a bad argument to say that you want someone else? No, I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Yeah, here's the problem. Are you ready for the problem?
Yeah.
You acted as though you had two choices: keep Mickey X, or we just randomly generate you the best possible ERL support player. No, you have to go and find that guy. You have to go and find the ERL support player, whom, by the way, you remember, you're not going to get like Targamas. That's obvious. He's already going to G2, mate. That's gone. So Targamas is gone. So what you're doing now is you're not even taking the obvious person. You're taking someone you've never seen play an LEC, and you're not saying he's going to be like blah, 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 like just good or like have a nice play. No, you're saying he's as good as prime Mickey X, because the problem wasn't that Mickey X is the worst player in the league. It's that he's not in his prime. That's the issue I have essentially with what coaches do. Is I think if you ask me which is a higher chance, that next year with a totally different set of players, so if it was a player that was affecting Mickey X's level or the environment, a totally different set of environment, the question is, which is more likely, that he gets really good again and is like a top European player, or this random person from ERL is as good as Mickey X, right? Yeah. You can argue if you want the latter, that it can just be the ERL player. I'll take the fucking former all day long, mate. That's why the show proves it. I will take the Nuke Ducks of the world over the Checker lads. I will take the Mickey X's over the fucking Mercers. I'll do that all day long. And the reason why I'll do it, SeeEl, is this. Because I actually think as a general pattern, I'll be wrong a few times. Like every now and then, maybe I'll pick a player. Like I'm trying to think who I would pick now who's like a bit washed. There's not really that many people in LEC at the moment, to be fair. Maybe some LCS players that are a bit washed. Right? There'll be every now and then, yeah, there will be a player that doesn't come back and he has 2 or 3 bad splits. He drops off his shit. But the amount of times that the really great players think they're able to get back to, as you said earlier, I mean, you don't even think there's form. So you put them in a different team, you give them a chance to improve, work on their issues. They can be a top player again, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a sort of arguing against the other philosophy of people who just throw you away after one bad split. You know,
no, I agree with that too, because I think that Mickey X is a kind of an exception kind of player, right? He's a generational player as well. If you look at it from the support role, the way he performed in G2, right? For
by the way, there's the other thing to say. I also mean it more extreme in these cases. Like Wunder and Mickey X were some of the absolute best players ever from Europe. They're not just like, it wasn't just a good player. Yeah, I'm purposely picking the best possible one.
I'm saying, like, in general, if you get like the average middle of the pack LEC player, the chance of finding someone else is actually quite high, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. If you flow it that way, I think that's fair.
I mean, the problem was that I thought that about Mickey, which is a little bit of a meme, because, you know, Mickey is one of those players that was at the top for a long time. And if you hang around top players for that long, I mean, it's, you know, anyone in that lineup, in the 2019 lineup, I would say would be good for a very long time, right?
Should rub off a bit, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but that being said, if you are in a budget team, I actually think to play devil's advocate, I actually think that's literally your job, right? For example, Astralis, right? I mean,
yeah, but you never have that option in a budget team. If you're a budget team, then you don't, like, you're not picking between Mickey X and, you know, whoever. You're picking between. I mean, how much do you think Mickey's on? Because I think that, you know, like, I can't talk about specific money stuff, but I think that, you know, an org like Astralis, if they're budgeting and they really decide that they want to run for like top 3 or top 4, they can go for one player, like one superstar player. It is possible, and they had a split where they were off, right? So if the offer was good enough or big enough, like, why not, right? It's just that when you want to look at sustainability, or when you want to look for new talents, that's literally our job as coaches. So I think my viewpoint is a little bit more skewed in the sense that it's not like. Yeah, I'm not like an outsider being like, oh yeah, like this guy's going to be better. It's not like that. There's no absolutes, and it's very, very hard to find someone like that.
Oh, for sure.
But if you're a coach, you kind of have to take the gamble, and I think that was the case with Rika, you know, and Mad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that was our time. There's no more rogue time. There's no more time in general, because time doesn't exist. It's just a concept and how humans linearly process their experience in life. The end.